I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Peter Daou. He is a Lebanese American political strategist, activist, musician, and author who has advised major political figures, including Hillary Clinton and John Kerry. Peter was also the former campaign manager for Marianne Williamson, and he is now the campaign manager for Dr. Cornel West. Welcome, Peter. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sabby. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So before we get into Dr. West's campaign, because I know a lot of us saw that announcement that came from Dr. West and yourself on Twitter that you are now his campaign manager, I want to start from the very beginning and kind of go in chronological order here, if I may. How did you get into electoral politics, and why did you decide to get into electoral politics to begin with?
Great. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go to the very beginning of where I was born. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. My dad was Lebanese and my mom was American. First 10 years of my life, Lebanon is a beautiful place. But at the age of 10, the Lebanese Civil War began. And the rest of my childhood and all my teens was just horrors, just violence, bomb shelters, escaped death maybe 20 times. It was hell. It was hell on earth. And I eventually got out and moved to New York to go to college, and got into the music business after college. I had been playing jazz. What got me through the war, I would sit in bomb shelters, and I had a little sort of shortwave radio that my dad had on batteries. With no electricity, all by candlelight, bombs are falling. And there was the Voice of America had a jazz show. There was a famous DJ called Willis Conover, and he would play Oscar Peterson and Art Tatum and all these great artists, Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan. And I'd listen to that as the bombs were falling, and I became a jazz lover, and it saved me. I studied classical piano, et cetera, and came to New York, downtown New York, the Village. It was like the jazz life. And for me, I lucked into the dance music community in the very early days, like late 80s, early 90s. And I met some really now very famous DJs, Frankie Knuckles, who had moved from Chicago, the godfather of house music. And because I was a jazz musician, all these DJs needed somebody to play keyboards for them with a little bit more musical knowledge. And I became one of 3 or 4 keyboardists in New York who did just about every remix that ever came out in the 90s. So, hundreds upon hundreds of records my name has appeared on, from Miles Davis to Janet Jackson, Mariah, Diana Ross, on and on and on. And it was an incredible time. And then George Bush was elected, or selected, I say. And at that point, I thought, I'd never worn a suit in my life. I was in my 30s. I didn't even know how to tie a tie. I remember the first time I went to like a political meeting, it's like I had to look online, or I don't even know if there was online. Then it's like, how do you tie a tie? But I started getting into online, if you recall, the net roots, which was sort of the grassroots internet community, the beginning of bloggers, Daily Kos and Josh Marshall and, Fire Dog Lake and that community. Matt Stoller, Jerome Armstrong, etc. Glenn Greenwald, Cenk. I mean, that was a little circle of us, and we were just sort of figuring out this blog thing. And in 2003, I'd become doing a lot of writing, a lot of protesting. I mean, I got into politics, to answer your question, Sabby, to protest George Bush. I'd lived through war in the Middle East, and here's this guy making a war based on lies, and Democrats are going along and giving him the power to do it. So I was in sit-ins and die-ins and marches and protests. I was basically an anti-war activist. The Democratic Party said, hey, Peter, why don't you come be a liaison to the net roots? That was my job. If you look, like 2006, New York Times wrote an article when I first worked for Hillary Clinton, describing me as the liaison to the progressive net roots. My whole thing was, I'm part of this community, maybe I can bring the ethos into the establishment. So my start in politics was anti-war activism, and I sort of got sucked into the system. Now, I made the mistake that I'm seeing people I respect making, which is I thought, oh, I can bring this net roots and progressive grassroots energy into the system and we'll change the system. Sure enough, 20 years later, I didn't change the system changed me. And I'm sitting here attacking my progressive friends, defending Hillary Clinton. And I want to say up front, I'm very sorry about the things I did then, because I was a very, very sort of like vigorous advocate. I'm loyal, I'm Lebanese, right? It's like you're in the trenches with someone you're fighting, but I was just wrong because I was attacking my own friends who were Bernie Sanders supporters. When I first started, Bernie, Paul Wellstone, people like that were my idols, right? So here I am, and I had to do a lot of soul searching. So I was viciously attacked. I look back at those days, I look at Jimmy Dore and others. They despised me at the time. A lot of the left community online, and I understand. I totally get it. Like I had two ways I could have gone with this. Either I just double down, be the establishment guy, screw you, you don't matter, or listen. So I thought, I did a lot of soul searching and with Leela, my wife, and I said, you know what? They're right, I'm wrong. So what do I do now? And I thought, okay, apologize, learn and grow, listen. And I've spent 7 years doing that. 7 years listening to this community. Even to this day, I read some of the commentary about me. I understand where it's coming from. I'm a Christian man, born in deep faith in the mountains of, like the biblical mountains of Lebanon, where my hometown was Byblos, where the word Bible comes from. And that deep sense of faith teaches me forgiveness. And I can't listen to critics and say, oh, you're bad and you're wrong. I have to accept it with humility and explain things. Well, I'm here with you, Sabby, because I want to explain some of the stuff, because I'm reading a lot of stuff that's just factually wrong. And I don't think that's fair to Dr. West because I'm working with him. And I think it's only right that I correct the record on some stuff. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. So that's my story of how I got to this point. And any questions you have for me, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much for that. Well, we welcome all different voices on this show. So my audience is familiar with different voices. I don't like creating an echo chamber. So we're going into Hillary Clinton's campaign. There was a tweet from you in 2012.
Yeah.
And it says, a retweet, Marnie Mix, today voters can get angry and vote for Jill Stein 2012. So for those who are not familiar, some people in the chat are really young. Jill Stein also ran in 2012, not just 2016. And it says, vote for Jill Stein to end poverty, protect civil liberties, and halt climate change. And that was tweeted from you November 6th of 2012. So I'm curious, it seems like back then you understood, you realized like the threat of climate change, you realized like what Jill Stein was running on. So after 2012, why not go and work with the Jill Stein campaign in 2016 instead of working with Hillary Clinton's campaign?
That's a great question. So over the years, Sabby, I've been critical of Democrats. People who know me from 2003, 2004, I was railing against the Democrats for giving Bush the authority to basically kill 1 million Iraqis and commit war crimes, and everybody responsible for enabling that. So I've never been shy to criticize Democrats. I went out after Obama hard about the drone, and people know a lot of this writing is no longer online because things get lost from that period. But people who know me know how hard I was about the drone strikes, especially some of the immigration stuff, the healthcare stuff. It's like, you have this opportunity, you have a supermajority, and now we're doing a Mitt Romney plan for healthcare. So in 2012, I saw Jill was running, and I didn't really know much about her, but I thought, okay, let's primary Obama. Let's get something different and try to make change. I've always had that progressive blood in me, but I believed in my heart. I have a child, I have a family, and I believed that representation, first woman president, overrode some of the ethical concerns I had, especially about Iraq with Hillary Clinton. And I worked with a lot of Democrats at the time. I was the sort of internet guy. So I worked with senators and congresspeople and organizations like Planned Parenthood and on and on and on. I was like the digital advisor with just a handful of other people who were at the beginning, inception of that. And so I felt that, because in 2008, I had already worked with Hillary as an advisor. I ran her internet department. Again, I'm still the digital person. I wasn't running her strategy or her campaign. I was running the digital department. That was what I did. So when she decided to run again in 2016, so 2012, I didn't really work for anybody at that point. I was just doing organizations mainly, like Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, and everything progressed. Like I want to say something, Sabby, that's very important. This notion that I'm some sort of shadowy operative mercenary. If I were a mercenary, I'd work for oil companies. I'd work for Republicans. I'd work for the military industrial complex. I have avoided every single opportunity to enrich myself from my very fortunate political career, 2 presidential campaigns, 2004, 2008. And I would have been a multimillionaire had I followed any of the paths of the David Axelrods and those types who end up inside the system lobbying $1 million a year, sitting in their cushy thing connected to everybody. I did the exact opposite. Everywhere I went was always, can I work for a progressive? Now, Hillary 2016 was where all of this stems from. I became a ferocious Hillary Clinton advocate. Once again, I apologize for how sort of aggressive I was about it. I thought, first woman president, nobody get in the way, representation matters. That's the most important thing right now because of women's rights. It was an issue to me. Of course, looking back now, to overlook, the stuff she did in Libya and just the war hawkery and all the other aspects of what she represented as part of the establishment that was antithetical to my values, I was just plain wrong to prioritize one fact of representation that she would, finally break that glass ceiling. So the soul searching I did was, okay, how can you go so sort of into this intense advocacy and sort of lose your soul? People do that side of it. People make mistakes. It's like, you try your best in the moment to do what you think is right. Republicans right now who are doing what they're doing think they're right. People who criticize Republicans who are Democrats and liberals, they think they're right. I have all my Democratic and liberal friends, including some Bernie friends. It's like, what are you doing, Peter, working for Cornel West? You're going to re-elect Trump. And they think they're right. But in my heart, I've come to believe that they're wrong. And the moral thing to do is to break this duopoly once and for all. And so that's sort of the trajectory. There was a year in which I was a fierce Hillary advocate, alienated a lot of people, for which I have tried to make amends for 7 years now. And I understand, some of that will never really, some people will continue to always be suspicious of me and not be good with me. And I accept that with an open heart, because they have that right. I can't tell somebody like me, but I can certainly tell you I've never ever worked for a major corporation, an oil company. I've never ever worked or voted for a Republican. I was a Democrat, thinking Democrats are marginally better, so let's work for Democrats. I'm no longer there. As of 2020, I'm no longer there. And if I may, and thanks for giving the space to explain this, may I speak about the Marianne Williamson campaign? Would that be okay?
We'll get to that in just a second.
Because I want to explain that that's a Democratic campaign. So if we can address that at some point, it would be great.
Absolutely. But I want to talk a little bit about the Hillary Clinton campaign. A lot of us that are viewers of the show and in this space came from that Bernie Sanders movement. Now, we have many criticisms of Bernie Sanders today. Don't get me wrong. We have several. Most of us are not supportive of Bernie Sanders anymore. We see what he really has become. But during that time, we felt like we really had a lot of energy to really implement some type of change in this country. As Bernie said, like a political revolution. During that campaign, when you were working with the Hillary campaign, there was the Bernie bro narrative that was established. A lot of us were called sexist because we didn't support Hillary Clinton. There was also the issue of Correct the Record, which was that Bernie Sanders troll farm. Bernie Sanders Facebook pages were shut down. And a lot of people have asked why. I did ask my audience before this interview a couple of days ago. I asked them if they would be interested in me interviewing you to get these answers from you. And there's a lot of frustration there because we looked at the energy that we had surrounding that campaign, and we felt like a lot of the smears that came from the Hillary Clinton camp really destroyed what could have been
Right.
more of a larger movement had it not been for those smears. So one of the questions that came my way, what was your involvement in those things that I mentioned, the Bernie Bro narrative, the sexism remarks, and the Correct the Record?
Okay, I will answer you very directly on each one. I openly at the time rejected the term Bernie Bro. I thought it was dismissive. I thought it was disgusting. I never used it. Maybe in a tweet where I said, don't use Bernie Bro. I was against that term. I thought it was really, really just a way to paint with too broad a brush. It was, I think, disrespectful to especially women of color who supported Bernie, as though only white males supported Bernie Sanders. I did not push that narrative at all. And in fact, I rejected the narrative both internally and publicly. You'll probably find some commentary where I say I don't like using that terminology, number one. Number two, my association with David Brock, who, it was not a very pleasant one in the end, because we know who David Brock is, but he had a media property called Blue Nation Review that somebody had started years ago, and he said, well, I purchased it. I said, okay, I'll run a media company and I'll say all these positive things about Hillary Clinton, right? But it turned into a lot of criticism of Bernie Sanders. And again, for which I regret deeply, but I had nothing to do with any troll farms. I just don't operate that way, Sabby. I'm not, for me, I come from a tradition in Lebanon where you're very, very straightforward. You're very honest. You're very blunt. A lot of people criticize me for being overeager and very real and direct, but that's just who I am. But I don't smear people. I was just like, what are you doing? We have to elect the first woman president. She's this amazing, whatever, it's too much, right? It's too much. But I was not involved in anything regarding smearing people or backroom stuff. I was basically running a media company and writing articles. So I was basically a CEO of a media company. I hired a bunch of writers, some of whom you all still know, and we just wrote a lot of material. Then I sort of turned that into an anti-Trump thing. And even the New York Times is commenting about, I kept starting anti-Trump hashtags, and I was doing a lot of videos with getting millions of views that were anti-Trump. So that was my association then. I was not involved in Hillary Clinton's campaign. I had nothing to do with their strategy whatsoever. I don't know if I ever had a conversation with anybody in the campaign during that entire cycle. I'm not sure they really liked me. I was not, I was an outsider. If you look, there are some comments about, oh, they didn't really like working with me, and I guarantee you they don't like me now. So the answer is unequivocally no. I don't engage in smears. I would not have a 25-year career if I were doing dirty tricks behind the scenes. I'm very upfront about what I believe, as I am being with you right now.
Well, I did see on Twitter, I do remember seeing on Twitter that there were tweets from you about Bernie Bros being sexist, about us being sexist, though. I do remember that.
I may have said, I don't believe if I used the term Bernie Bro, but I certainly, maybe towards the very end, but it was a term that I know that I wrote at the time. It's a term I don't like using. However, I did definitely use the sexism argument, and in the belief that if you're blocking the election of the first woman president, and it was a wrong argument. But I want to say something more to this, Sabby. Like a lot of the criticism of me, almost all of it boils down to you were a fierce Hillary Clinton advocate and you were mean when you did it. Yes, 100%. That is 100% true. I was a very, very fierce Hillary Clinton advocate. I don't know. 7 years of apologies. I can continue to apologize, and I will, because I was wrong, and I contributed to a bad environment, and I caused damage. I single-handedly did not stop Bernie Sanders from winning. I wasn't even in Hillary Clinton's campaign. That was a campaign between two candidates, but I was out there very vocal. So again, yes, I did say some of those things. You're correct about that.
Okay, let's move into Marianne Williamson's campaign. So this year you were the campaign manager for Marianne Williamson 2024. There was a tweet that you put out where you announced that you were actually stepping down from that campaign. And that caused quite a buzz because it wasn't just you. There was also another staff member that said that they were Jason Call. He said he was stepping down too, although I think he's also running a campaign himself. So I think there was some bandwidth issues there. But could you please explain to everyone, because there's a lot of rumors. There was an article that was written by Jen Dees. We discussed it on this show about some of the treatment of the staff members and the volunteers with Marianne Williamson's campaign. I know in your tweet you mentioned that you were having to leave the campaign to take care of your parents. I guess they were ailing at that point in time, but a lot of people have assumed that it's more than that because of all the other information that's come out about Marianne's campaign. So I want to give you the opportunity to explain why did you decide to leave that campaign?
Yeah, may I say why I decided to join it as well, because I think that'll provide some context. Okay, so when I joined Marianne's campaign, there was nobody else who had declared. Certainly Cornel West had not, and certainly Robert Kennedy Jr. had not, and Biden had not. I had made a vow that I was going to do everything I could to shake up the system this time and to not let the duopoly just decide who we were getting. And I've been very vocal about it, trying to push Biden out of the race. I have privately and publicly encouraged both Marianne Williamson, and I'm going to be very slow and crystal clear about this, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. to run as independents, not because I support them or don't support them. This is, for me, was all about a mission for it to actually have democracy. The Democrats were saving democracy. You're not saving. First of all, what democracy are you saving? Second of all, you're kicking Greens off the ballot. You're squelching any sort of opportunity for an actual primary. So for me, when I joined that campaign in 2021, I think I sent you this tweet. I don't know if maybe you can put it up or share it with your viewers. In 2021, I publicly told Marianne Williamson in an exchange on Twitter, I'm supporting third parties and independent candidates. Marianne hired me knowing that was my position. And I encouraged her to do it, both in the campaign, and I encouraged her to do it when I left the campaign.
One second, Peter, sorry to interrupt, but I found that, and I do want to have a question really quick before you go on. So this is the tweet that Peter is referring to, calling on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson, run as independents, time to stop the farce that the Democratic primary is democratic. So this was May 25th of 2023. So just so people are clear and understand that, when you joined that campaign, your intention was to get them to run, or to get her and to also get RFK Jr. to break away and run as an independent.
I believe that was the right thing. I have to be careful, not because I have an NDA. Marianne Williamson released me from my NDA, but because I'm a professional and I don't talk shit, excuse my language, about people I've worked with, whether I agree with them or not. So I'm not here to trash Marianne Williamson. And the issue with my mother. So here's what happened. At the time that Marianne called me and told me I'm running and I need a campaign manager, I was down in Florida where my mother was in hospice care. She's still okay, thank God, a year later. But my mother was very, very sick in hospice care. And then at the same time, Leela, my wife, her mother received a terminal diagnosis, and also in Florida. So we were down there taking care of our parents, and Marianne called. I thought, okay, this is an opportunity for me to do what I thought. Maybe run and do a dirty break. Maybe she'll decide to run as an independent. Whatever we do, we're going to put some fear into the system, into the coronation of Joe Biden. I thought, I'm trying to be strategic here. Nobody else was running. I had no idea Cornel West was going to run. I certainly, this is my dream to be working with Cornel West. So my strategic thinking was shake up the system however you can shake it up. Over the years, Sabby, and I said this very publicly, there have been occasions, including my friend Jason Cole, who's now running as a Green, in which I will help a very progressive Democrat with a good platform. Her platform on Ukraine is the opposite of how I feel. We should not be sending billions of dollars to Ukraine right now. The United States has, I believe Putin's actions are imperialistic. However, I believe the United States has provoked, and NATO has provoked every step of the way. They have escalated, provoked. They could have been peacemakers. They are sending money there to waste the lives of the Ukrainian people just to enrich the military-industrial complex. It is unbelievably unethical. They are sending cluster bombs, which 40 years from now, and I am a child of war, will be killing Ukrainian children. Now they're sending depleted uranium weapons. So my position on Ukraine is radically different from Marianne Williamson. However, again, I felt, okay, strategically, let's shake this up. If she runs an independent, then I, had a conversation with Bobby Kennedy Jr. Again, I can't reveal the details of conversations. It would not be correct. I can say that I spoke to someone and I tweeted that, but I'm not going to reveal what we said and what they said. But I have encouraged them both, run Indy. Enough of this Democratic Party. This Democratic Party is anti-democratic. And, I had an interview with a mainstream reporter today who could not believe that I was saying Democrats are the same threat to democracy as Republicans. And the reporter was saying, but January 6th. I said, Barack Obama called every candidate to drop out of the race. If that's not tampering with an election, Bernie was winning and Buttigieg was doing well. I've never seen in all my years somebody like Buttigieg, close to winning one of the caucuses or primaries, just dropping out. So that was effectively, that's rigging, right? That's anti-democratic. So from my standpoint, the Marianne experience, and then about a month into it, it became so stressful to the point my blood pressure was up like 20 points. And my wife turned to me and said, Peter, you can't take care of your mom, we can't take care of our parents, and you're dealing with a very stressful situation here. I restructured the campaign. There was a lot of internal stuff that was difficult to do. Campaign management is not easy. And I thought, you know what, I have to choose my mom or I choose Marianne Williamson campaign. I'm choosing my mom, right? And so I just said I have to leave. So there was nothing deceptive about it. Was there more going on? Of course. Did I have some strategic thinking of, because that tweet encouraging her was 10 days after I left. So I 100 still to this day think Marianne Williamson and Robert Kennedy should run as independents. The Democratic primary is a farce right now. It's an absolute farce. There's nothing democratic about it. And I am absolutely ecstatic to be working. And I want to speak about Cornel West for 1 minute. This man is an intellectual giant. Okay, he's one of the legends of our time. 100 years from now, he will be looked back on the way that James Baldwin is. All right, and other leaders like that. He's a moral leader. The notion that Peter Daou, some refugee from Lebanon, house music producer, is going to somehow change the ethics or the morals of a man of his intellectual and moral stature is frankly insulting to Cornel West, and I reject it outright. I'm an operator. I operate. Campaign management is like building a car. I make sure the tires work. I make sure the engine is working. I make sure the machine works so it gets Cornel West to the destination. But I really, really, really want to outright reject this notion that somehow Jill Stein, Cornel West, Ajamu Baraka, people, Chris Hedges, these are people I've always respected. You saw that tweet from Jill, from me 11 years ago, that somehow all these people are going to take what Peter Daou tells them and completely change their morals and ethics. It is laughable on its face. I respect the criticism, but there's a limit to which this becomes, I believe, insulting to Dr. West, and I just want to reject that wholeheartedly, Sabby. I think we have to stand on principle here. This man is a gift to American politics. He's a moral leader. He's a man of deep faith and deep intellectual rigor. And it's an honor for me to even be in his presence, let alone running his campaign. And I just want to, I can't say enough, and I invite everybody to join and support Cornel West's campaign, please. And this is why I have the poster behind me. This is way more important than who the campaign manager is. This is shaking up the system and challenging the duopoly in a way that no other individual will be able to do or has been able to do. It's historic. Sorry about the rant, but I wanted to get it out there.
I think the thing is I hear what you're saying. I think the thing is, after Bernie and after the squad, a lot of us were burned by Bernie Sanders and the squad. So the threshold this time around is so much higher. I played a video on the show a couple of nights ago where Jill Stein actually crashed the DNC convention. I don't know if you remember that, but in 2016, she crashed the DNC convention, and someone was interviewing her as they were walking by, and she was talking about the neoliberalism and the fascism. And she was comparing Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I played that video for my audience to see, just as a reminder, Jill Stein used those same terms, just like Cornel West did. And I asked them, we did a call in after, and I asked them, so why is it such problematic now? And what my viewers told me is because things are so much different now, because we were burned by Bernie Sanders and the squad. So they're less trusting now than they were a couple of years ago. So I think, plus now we've had a Biden and a Trump, right? So just to give you some perspective, but I think one of the questions that I have going into the Marianne Williamson campaign, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. If I remember correctly, in 2020, you voted Green, correct? Or you supported?
I supported Charlie Hawkins, absolutely. Yeah, I was very vocal Green supporter at the time. And also, the continuation of that was as soon as Dr. West announced at the very beginning, and I've tweeted about this. So again, I'm not revealing anything that is proprietary or private. I helped Jill Stein and other friends in the Green Party make the transition from the People's Party to the Green Party, because I thought that was the right thing to do. I was working behind the scenes, but I was not advising Dr. West. And I did that behind the scenes with Jill Stein, and I let it be. I had one meeting with Dr. West and his beautiful wife, and they're both such wonderful souls. These are deeply, deeply, to me, some of the most ethical and kind and humble and generous people I have ever worked with in my life. And we had one meeting, nice to meet you. And I think I tweeted, I finally got called Brother Peter by Dr. West. This was like a big moment for me in my life. Didn't hear a word. 5 days ago, I got a phone call and Dr. West said, I'd like you to be the campaign manager. I said, it's my honor. I've been waiting this whole time. I wasn't going to do any other work until I knew if there was an opportunity here, because this would be the work of a lifetime. This is the sort of the culmination of my whole life. So, that's basically how it unfolded step by step, and now I find myself here with an unbelievable opportunity to do something that has not been done before. But Sabby, can I just talk for a minute about campaign management? Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding that anybody can be a campaign manager. I'm a campaign professional the way, and I don't, not to elevate myself at all, but the way, say, an NFL player plays football, right? That's what they do. They're a football player. Now, there are many great NFL players or basketball players who never get the ring. They never get the championship ring, but they're still good at what they do and they contribute. No, I have not won the White House. You can count on your hand how many advisors have won the White House. I've worked on races like John Kerry's in the primary that won the primary and then lost the general election after all the shenanigans in Ohio. I've worked with campaigns that lost, and I've mainly worked with insurgent progressive campaigns. Well, you don't know how to win. I know how a campaign operates at the highest levels with a huge operation. I would like to bring that knowledge and experience to Dr. West because, I keep saying, Dr. West and I are jazz lovers. So I said, Dr. West, you got, McCoy Tyner, Jimmy Garrison, Elvin Jones, and John Coltrane, one of the greatest quartets in history. Well, imagine McCoy Tyner's piano is completely out of tune. Now, he'll still sound good, but it's going to make it a little bit funky. It's going to be a little bit off, right? The genius of them is how perfectly they work together. A good campaign works like a symphony orchestra, like a jazz band, like a Miles Davis quintet, and my job is to just make sure that happens. My job is not to tell Cornel West what to believe, because that man's beliefs are so far beyond what I've ever achieved in my life. I follow Cornel West. Cornel West does not follow me. Do we talk? Of course we talk. My job is simply to make sure the bills are paid, that everybody, and I have to know everybody's role, Sabby. I need to know what the finance team does. I need to know what the field team does. I need to know what the graphics team does. I need to know technology, email. There's a huge amount of knowledge that goes into building a campaign. And it is very hard to find people who were blessed enough to have my experience who will work for the Green Party. They just won't do it because they get blacklisted. And I don't care, because I've never been in it for the money. I'm in it for the cause and the mission. Have I made mistakes in the past? Absolutely. And have I said things that I regret? Absolutely. But I've always been for the cause of the people that Dr. West is here for, because he always focuses on the people. I tell him, look, we're not here to serve the critics. We're here to serve the people who are oppressed by the system. The critics we will take as Christian men. I will take that to heart. I will listen. I will treat it with forgiveness and love and humility. But I'm here to serve the people that Dr. West has spent his lifetime fighting for. And again, thank you for giving me the space to express myself. I really appreciate the time you're giving me to open up my heart and let you know who I am as a person.
So the reason why I asked if you supported the Green Party in 2020, because I remember people tweeting about that you did support Howie Hawkins in 2020. The reason why I asked that question is because if you were supporting the Green Party in 2020, why then go to work in a Democrat campaign in 2024? Why not wait and go to a Green Party campaign? And I asked that question because the Green Party runs a presidential candidate every presidential election cycle. So why the pivot from the Green back to the Democratic Party, and now you're going into the Green Party again?
Yeah, it's a fair question, but as I tried to explain, and I don't want to repeat myself because I don't want to take time from the rest of your show. As I expressed, my overall thinking was, I did not know Dr. West was going to run. My overall thinking was shake things up. Williamson was the only campaign that had declared at the time, and I thought there was a possibility for a dirty break or an independent run. And I thought strategically that was the correct thing. I did not work for that campaign because it was a Democratic campaign. But I have said, Sabby, including with my friend Jason Call last cycle, this cycle he's agreed, I will sometimes work with a very progressive or a Democratic socialist who has a very strong platform, even if they're inside the party, because that way at least I'm shaking up the system. But clearly after a month, it was clear to me that this was not a fit. I tried to do something strategic in terms of shaking things up. That was my aim. My aim was not elect Democrats. Let me make you a vow right now. And I put it up, and this is a vow from me, also from the campaign, because I posted up on behalf of me and Dr. West. We are not sheep herding anyone into the Democratic Party. Listen to me carefully. We are going to the end. Dr. West is getting on the ballot. If we are so blessed and fortunate to get the nomination of the Green Party, because I want to approach the Green Party with a total humility. We are seeking the nomination. We have not earned the nomination yet. So from our perspective, we are trying to get the nomination of the Green Party, trying to get on the ballot in all the states, and trying to, and intending 100%. There will not be, oh, you know what, we're going to elect Trump or Republicans, so you know what, dropping out and you go vote for the Democrat. Tell you right now, this is not what this is about. This campaign is about, once and for all, challenging the system with a man of great intellectual and moral stature who is far better than any candidate presidentially that I can think of, certainly in my lifetime, and I don't know historically, one of the greatest presidential candidates we've ever had. The challenge, Sabby, will be incredibly hard because the system will try to crush us every step of the way. Oh, you're a spoiler. Oh, you're going to elect Trump. Oh, you're going to help the fascists, on and on and on and on. I have blinders on. I'm going to help build this machine with everything I have, and we are going to go and challenge the system. And that's a promise that I give you.
I think a lot of us agree with Dr. West's policies, and a lot of us love Dr. West. I think the concern, though, is the pivot from you. So again, as I said earlier in the show, is that people are less trusting this time around because of what happened with Bernie Sanders and with the squad members as well. So I know you said that, you're part of this campaign now, but sometimes you would work with progressive members to shake things up. While you are now campaign manager for the Dr. West campaign in the Green Party, are you going to be working with any Democrat progressive candidates?
No, absolutely not. I am 100% campaign manager. I am 100% dedicated to the Green Party. Look, Sabby, I've done a lot of soul searching about what is the right way. I did spend a lot of time thinking about just, independent runs, because the Constitution provides for independents to run, and yet the duopoly has made sure that we have violated the constitutional principle in the 14th Amendment that we have the right to run parties and vote for people. George Washington, I hate quoting slaveholders, and that's how I feel about the founders. But just from a historical perspective, in his farewell address, railed against the party system and against this idea that two parties would, the parties would just start becoming dominant over everything. I will absolutely not, this is it, is the Green Party. I'm working with Dr. West to seek the nomination for the Green Party because I believe the Green Party is the future for America and for the world. I mean, you talk about the Green New Deal. You talk about, this is my Jill Stein tweet from 10 years ago. This is the party that has the possibility to make the world no longer red, blue, but red, blue, green. And it will transform possibilities for people. So absolutely, I will not be working with any Democrat. I am 1000% in for Dr. West. This is my job, and I will be there till the very last day. And as long as he needs me to serve him, I will be here.
So one of the things that Dr. West is really passionate about, even before he started this campaign, is the rights of Palestinian people, right? So we know that he was denied tenure from Harvard because of his position in reference to Israel and Palestine. So he, in my opinion, has been right on that issue, even when it was not popular to do so. I feel like it's more popular for people to do that now. One of the things that has come up has been your involvement with the IDF. And I do want to ask about that because I know that is one of the pressing questions that's come from people. In 2015, there was a discussion between you and Rania Khalek in reference to that, where she said, "What terrorists did you face in Beirut? Palestinian women and children in Sabra and Shatila?" And you responded, "And I'm sure you know the history of the Lebanese war involves atrocities by all sides and by major powers." And then on this piece here, Rania said the guy who started the hashtag Hillary Men was apparently a Lebanese phalangist. They were murderous fascists. And down here, I noticed that you said they trained all high school boys and then took them to camps. I was a child doing Sabra/Shatila years before. I want to talk about your experience with this because
absolutely
the Palestinian people, that's a big, and I've said this to about every candidate that's running, it's a big red flag for me, depending on their position in reference to Israel and Palestine. Obviously, you're not the candidate, but you're managing Dr. West's campaign, and we know how he feels about the Palestinian people. Could you talk a little bit about your involvement with the IDF and how did this actually work in this discussion that you had with Rania?
Yes, I'd be happy to clear this up. I have always supported the Palestinian people, some of the most brutally oppressed people on this planet. You will not find a single tweet or comment where you see me supporting Israel's apartheid or criticizing the Palestinian people. In fact, one of those tweets that Rania, and by the way, I think Rania was right to call me out on that. We had an exchange. We now follow each other online. I respect her for calling me out on that she was perfectly entitled to do so. The original tweet that generated this whole conversation, and Sabby, I believe I sent it to you, was me defending Palestinian children from Israel slaughtering them. Then some right-winger whose account has now been deleted, and this is where things get taken out of context, okay? I want to state this unequivocally. I am 100% opposed to Israel's brutal oppression of the Palestinian people. These are people who have been treated, it's absolutely crimes against humanity how they are being treated, and I've always believed this, always. And on my mother's side, I'm Jewish, I'm Christian on my dad's side. So I say this as someone with a Jewish background as well, okay? And this is something that's unacceptable to the world, and we should not be sending money to fund this, okay? And I've been crystal clear about this for years. Those tweets, when I was 14 years old, Sabby, I was in the Christian part of Lebanon, and Lebanon is sectarian and divided in that way. And during that war, the Lebanese forces was the militia that was fighting on the Christian side. At 14 years old, as a high schooler, I was in high school early, they came to our school, and they began doing 2 to 3 hours of mandatory training, mandatory conscription after class, whether or not we had work to do, whether our parents disagreed. It was mandatory training. It lasted 2 or 3 years until I was about 17. And during that time, I was not trained by the IDF at all. The tweet I was trying to say is that the IDF and the US government as well was arming and training the Christians because they were fighting the Syrians and other, it was geopolitical forces meddling in the country, including Israel, the United States, others as well, right? So I was trained against my will. I was taken to a camp. My parents tried to pull every political string to get me out of the country, arguing that I'm a US citizen and I cannot serve in another military. They would not let me leave the country. For 2 years, I was not allowed to leave Lebanon. My passport was confiscated. I could not leave. And eventually my father, who had some political connections in Lebanon, got me out. I went back once only to Lebanon since then. I saw my dad before he died. Once. Excuse me.
It's okay. Take your time.
I've not harmed a soul in my life. And I condemn those massacres in Sabra and Shatila. Rania was correct to call me out, but I was just being blustery with some right-wingers said, what do you know about the military? What experience do you have? Well, I was trained by the Lebanese forces and the IDF was training. So it was me being a blustery guy, just basically saying, yeah, I have more military experience than you do. I challenge anyone to find a single tweet in which I have criticized Palestinians or supported Israel, because that is not in my heart. I, with Dr. West, 100% am behind the Palestinian people and their suffering. And that's crystal clear. So those tweets, again, looking back now as being sort of the Lebanese guy, like I had military experience. I was fighting with right-wingers online at the time. And they're all about, oh, you don't know how to touch a gun. You don't know how to do this or that. Well, yeah, I sure do, because I was trained to do so. And that's it in a nutshell, Sabrina. I'm crystal clear on my ethics on that issue. And I say it having lived in that region. And it pains me greatly. The Sabra and Shatila massacres were monstrous, hideous, fascist acts that are condemnable. I condemned them years ago. There's an article about me in the New Republic in which the reporter dug very deeply. He said there's not a shred of evidence that I was ever involved in anything like that. And in fact, I never was involved, and I condemn it from the absolute bottom of my heart. I do understand people reading those tweets having questions. I think it's absolutely fair for you to ask it. I think Rania was absolutely right to ask me and confront me. I respect her for doing so. And I believe like we've crossed the threshold of, I think, being more friendly toward one another, and I respect her greatly.
Here's the tweet you were referring to, Peter. No matter our political and ideological proclivities, can we all agree it's a terrible thing to kill children? Hashtag Gaza, hashtag Israel. And that was August 1st, 2014.
And then if you scroll down is the tweet where somebody confronted me. And then I say, I grew up in the Beirut. This person was challenging me. What do you know about the region? What do you know about military stuff? And my response was that response. But my original comment was defending Palestinian children from Israel murdering them. So you could see my heart where it was in 2014. I had nothing to prove to anybody. I didn't know Dr. West or anything. This is This is me, 9 years ago, defending Palestinian children against Israel's aggression. And that's where I am on the issue. I've been crystal clear on the issue. I cannot help, Sabby, that I was a child conscript. I don't want to call myself a victim. I was the recipient of a militia that was training every boy there. And I was on the receiving end of it. It was terrifying. They used live ammunition. There were training sessions in which they would just throw grenades. Each trainer had a quota of how many boys he could kill in the training. This was raw war. It was absolutely terrifying. And I lived through absolute hell. If I may just tell very quickly, do I have 1 minute to just tell you one story of what the experience of Beirut was like? Or if you don't have
sure,
time.
you have plenty of time. Just really quick, I want to tell everyone, apparently this account that responded to you, apparently that account was suspended. So I don't know what they said, but something was suspended there. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so again, my experience of there's an example. There was and when I was telling Rania that there were atrocities on all sides, the Sabra and Shatila massacres were some of the most hideous massacres in the past 50, 60 years ever. Horrible, women and children. It was one of the most condemnable acts of violence imaginable. Now, but when I was saying there are other atrocities too, it was carnage. They were just bombing residential areas. Like they would take these, what they call grad missiles, these huge missiles, and just lob them into buildings. And I was on the receiving end of that stuff. We would count down as a family with all my brothers and sisters sitting in hallways, how many seconds until the projectile would hit the building or hit near us. If we heard the explosion, we were alive. If we didn't hear it, we were dead. It was that every night. There was one time I went to a supermarket where there was a spate of car bombings of supermarkets. Let's kill 250 people and bomb a supermarket. I'm driving to the market. I'm 15, 16 years old. I get 1 minute away from the supermarket, the biggest market in that area. And my car jumps up like 5 feet off the ground with this massive explosion. What happened was the car bomber was about 4 cars ahead of me, and it detonated before he got to the market. I was headed to the market where this car bomber was headed to just blow it to smithereens. I get out of my car completely rattled. His car's on fire. Sorry, trigger warning here because I'm going to be graphic. Half his body was on one side of the street. The other half, he had been blown just to bits. The other half was on the other side of the street. And I'm sitting here looking over this burning car and this man's body split in half. This was my day-to-day, Sabby. It has left me with PTSD. I have severe hypervigilance. In other words, I worry about my loved ones far more than an average person does because you fear you're going to die at any given moment, and it has left scars. And this is why I feel like our sending billions of dollars to use Ukrainian children as fodder, are sending money, and this is coming from Democrats, to go and Dr. West has spoken out about this as well. Arming Saudis to kill Yemeni children. When children suffer like that, it hits me deep in my heart because I lived that. So, a lot of my politics to people to understand me is because I came from a place where I have deep scars from that war. And again, thank you for letting me express that. And so people can understand, how my mind works.
So when you were talking about, because that was one of the things I think that rubbed people the wrong way. When you were talking about atrocities on both sides, you were talking about the civilian casualties.
I was talking about the widespread attacks on civilians. That was a war in which it was just basically outright war on civilians everywhere. But I want to separate that, and I think I shouldn't have conflated it with Rania during those conversations. I was defending myself. People get defensive online. Everybody thinks they're right. Those tweets weren't correct, and I can understand why people read this and so why some IDF, you're Zionist. I mean, I'm the exact opposite of that. As somebody of a Jewish background, I have been incredibly, critical of Israel's brutality toward the Palestinian people. So, but I get it. Look, I get it. I accept the criticisms, and I'm deeply grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to just talk about it. I want to come back to one thing, though. Dr. West, as you have said, has been unequivocal in support of his Palestinian brothers and sisters. He has been. This is what's great about Cornel West, is that he just is so unwavering in his moral values, and that's why I keep coming back to, I'm not going to change Cornel West's morals. I'm not going to tell him what to think. I'm not going to change his mind. I'm going to learn from this man, and I'm going to serve this man with dignity and humility, but I sure as hell am not going to change who he is. And I think we all have a lot to learn from him, Sabby. I mean, not many people of that intellectual caliber and moral caliber exist in our country and are willing to get into the political fray, because he's going to get a lot of attacks. Let me tell you, the type of like venom and just incoming fire, metaphorically speaking, that's going to come at Cornel West is going to be intense. And I beg of all of you who believe in the cause, please, I am just the operator of the campaign, like I'm running a car, like I'm just part of the band. Cornel West is the candidate. He is the man who is taking an exceptionally bold stance to put himself out there, and we need to come together. You know, I think of a Jimmy Dore who really just has disliked me for years, and I get it in those days. You know, during his exchange with Dr. West, I'm going to listen to Dr. West, and I'm going to hear what he has to say and understand that he is the one teaching us. We're not teaching him. But at the same time, with Force the Vote, I thought Jimmy was right on Force the Vote. Yeah, you know, he doesn't like me. I get it. He's never going to like me. But I was actually, if you go back and look at my tweets, I supported Force the Vote because I'm thinking, wait a minute, you know, the squad and Bernie, didn't you promise us Medicare for all? Didn't you run on that? And now suddenly you're not even going to bring it to the floor? You're not going to even talk about it? I mean, the wholesale sort of sellout of who we thought there. What I'm saying is the only flaw in it is that we should never support Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, to me, is that like a Mitch McConnell. This is somebody, a person who has enriched herself to the tune of $120 million by the system. You know, when Democrats say, oh, Democrats are better than Republicans. Look at Nancy Pelosi, just the way I look at Mitch McConnell, just all these people are getting enriched by the oligarchy. And so I want to, there's nuance here, Sabby. You know, like people can disagree, but overall, we're part of a mission here. And Dr. West is our leader for this mission, and we must come together. We must come together. We're not going to get another opportunity like this. These don't come along. I've been doing this 25 years. I've never seen such an opportunity to really shake up the system properly. So I encourage everyone to look past the momentary kerfuffles that happen, eyes on the prize. And that's what Dr. West always says.
So I want to talk a little bit about, and I showed everyone the Force the Vote thing. You tweeted that December 21st of 2020, Force the Vote was a good idea. I want to talk a little bit about Dr. West's campaign. One of the things that I did ask him when he came onto the show is this campaign going to be more of a movement, so to speak? And so I think a lot of people who are supporting Dr. West are looking forward to some type of movement. Is there any type of strategy in place for that? I did see, really quick, I did see that Dr. West is speaking at the Peace in Ukraine rally in DC October 3rd. I did advertise that event on the show the other night. So I did see that. But in reference to a strategy of building a movement, what is the plan there?
Okay, that's an excellent question. I'm glad we're coming to the campaign. So there are pieces to this puzzle, how you build it, right? And I keep using the analogy of a car. You know, if one part of the engine isn't working, this car is not going to run. My first task with Dr. West is to build an efficient, strong campaign structure, one that can actually carry him forward. This is 100% going to be a movement-driven campaign because this is the only campaign you can run for the Green Party and for Dr. West. The system is going to block us at every turn. The propaganda, you know, I saw somebody do a montage of how many times spoiler was used in mainstream corporate media. Is he a spoiler? Is he a spoiler? This is propaganda techniques. This is not some accidental question. He will be blocked at every step. And the way we overcome that is building a movement. Now, movement building, you know, sounds, you know, it's a term that's used a lot, but it's an exceptionally difficult thing to do because a movement is something that groundswell from the bottom up. So for me, I need to partner up with the organizers, the ground organizers. I'm a national politics guy, right? My job is to make sure all the pieces are working together. But I want to invite and bring on board on the ground organizers. You know, I think of people, you know, I'm thinking of RBN, for example. I think of Afeni, I think of Rome. I think of people out there on the streets helping people, right? And there are so many amazing organizers locally. Those are the people I am in awe of. As a national politics guy, I look to them. So the answer to your question is 100%. This has to be movement driven. Dr. West himself is such an appealing figure and will bring people to him. But this is not something where I just turn on, and I'm not saying you're saying this. I don't want to be disrespectful in any way because it's the correct question. I can't just turn on the movement switch, right? There are so many pieces that need to be put into place. The right email program, the right digital program, the right ground game, the right staff, the right finances, the right fundraising. It is a very complex operation, Sabby. A presidential campaign has so many moving parts. It's like one of those Swiss watches where one thing cannot go wrong. When we put this structure in place in the immediate days, we are going to bring on board more and more organizers and spread out on the ground. And we will work to build this as a movement. I cannot make promises. The first thing I told Dr. West, I cannot promise you increase 1% in the polls if I join your campaign. But I will promise you this campaign will operate at the highest levels of excellence, and we will operate with honesty and dignity and transparency. That's what I can promise. But yes, Abby, we need to build a movement, and we need everybody's help. Your audience, and even the people criticizing me and criticizing Dr. West, we need them. We need each of them. We're in this together, because the Democratic Party will attempt to crush us even more than the Republican Party will attempt to crush us. They're out there kicking Greens off the ballot. Okay, so there's a big challenge ahead of us, and I'm just like 100% focused. My focus is bring this to the ultimate fruition, that we can bring it to the maximum excellence, and really talking to the people that he centers. I hope that answers your question. It's a short answer is yes. It has to be a movement.
So one of the key things that we like to talk about a lot on this show are demands. Like, when you have a movement, you have to have a set of demands. Bernie Sanders, I think if you look back at his political campaigns, everybody knows Medicare for all, right?
Yep.
What would you say is going to be the key topic or the key item here in reference to this campaign and this movement, so to speak? What would you say if you had to say the top 2 or 3 issues that you were going to focus on for this campaign? What would those be? And is there a set of demands?
Okay, the demands and the more nuances of the message I want to leave to Dr. West. I'm an operations person. It's not, I have my personal beliefs, and I've shared some with you, but I'm not the policy person. However, let me identify 2 issues right away. The issue of the oppression through this capitalist system of tens upon tens of millions of people, both racial oppression as well, and deep inequality. The people who are forgotten. These are the people Dr. West has always spoken to and about. In other words, centering the people that no duopoly campaign will ever center and focus on. And that's broad, but it is representing and speaking, uplifting the people who are forgotten by the system. As I said, I was doing an interview with a mainstream reporter. I said, the vast majority of people are suffering. He said, what do you mean most people are suffering? I said, do you have any idea what it's like for the working class to survive in this country, to get medical care, to afford food? So the forgotten people. Another major one, critically important, the climate issue. Now, Dr. West on climate is about 500 steps ahead from what any Democrat or Republican would ever say. The Democrats are equally, if not worse, because under Joe Biden, we have had more oil drilling than under Trump. And this is one of the existential crises of our time, and we're running for the nomination of the Green Party. So I will tell you right now, the climate issue is going to be absolutely central to this campaign, because it is one of the great threats of our time. But also the oppression of the people through this capitalist system, this oligarchy in which a few people are running away with everything, and the duopoly serves those people and builds the laws and the structure around them. And the people, the working class is completely forgotten. And those are the people. Can I say one more thing? I want to share one little thing with you about when Dr. West uses the term brothers and brothers and sisters. Some people think it's just a way he greets people, and it's an endearing part of how he addresses people. But there's a deep Christian background to why Dr. West says that. Dr. West approaches everyone. They're created in the image of God. They are brother and sister created in the image of God. And this is with his opponents too, and his critics. So when you'll hear Dr. West say brother this or sister that, this is coming from a place of deep humility and faith, of looking at people as a collective of humanity. Now, that doesn't mean he won't vehemently disagree and fight for the cause he believes in, but I think that's something we should really think through very carefully about how to approach the situation. We are speaking to those who are the least able to fight for themselves. Those are the people we need to uplift. We don't want to, as the duopoly does, is just support the rich and the well-off and the billionaires and the big corporations. Our job is to completely flip that on its end. And it's going to challenge a lot of people, and it's going to cause a lot of consternation in the system, Sabby. This is not an easy thing to do, and it's very challenging to the entrenched powers. Believe me, that's why nobody wants to take my job with my experience, because you are literally going at the system head on. And it's something that requires a tremendous amount of faith to do, and the vision of Dr. West. So I'm so happy that he's doing this and that we have this opportunity with him.
Yeah, I'm asking this because I was looking at a poll recently. It says the number one issue that Americans have right now is the economy. So, in reference to demands and building a movement, is there any strategy around addressing the issues that Americans are facing in reference to the economy, such as the increasing inflation that we have right now? The grocery store prices are increasing. The child poverty rate actually doubled. That was reported recently as well. Is there anything in reference to
Homelessness at record highs, suicide rate at record highs, 25% of adults not getting enough to eat, going hungry. A quarter of adults in America are going hungry. It is an astounding fact that this so-called greatest and richest country in the world, the deep economic misery people are facing. We will prioritize it, Sabby. I'm not going to talk about specific strategies to do it, but that economic pain and misery from this capitalist system is core. That's what I was saying before, like the people, to uplift the people. These are the forgotten people. It's essentially, it's the working class. It's the people who are forgotten by the system and treated as fodder by the system. They're going to be centered. How we do it, with what messaging, what rallies. You saw his video about the UAW strike. Dr. West has always been on the front lines. He's put his body on the line for 40 years. He's going to keep doing that. And yes, we're going to focus it more and more and more. But Dr. West is not this is sort of campaign speak, but, you sort of message your candidate. You sort of tell them, oh, say it this way or say it that way, and it will appeal to this. Democrats and Republicans will focus group, right? Or they'll dial test, or they'll poll. $50,000 poll just to see if somebody likes this, or put your finger in the wind type of approach. This is not Dr. West. He has centered the same people, suffering people, his whole life. But how we bring that, Sabby, is an absolutely valid question. How are you going to turn that into a campaign? How are you going to appeal? How are you going to build a movement? These are huge challenges. They're not easy. I have no magic bullet where, I snap my fingers and everybody's going to see his message and flock to us. This is a grind every day. He's going to be out there on the front lines. He's going to be at marches. He's going to be, at strikes. He's going to be talking to the people. And I believe if we do this right, and we do it with a high level of sort of dedication and efficiency and integrity, I do believe this campaign will begin to take off. Once it takes off, watch out, because once people see, and this is not just for Democrats or Bernie supporters or leftists or libertarians, everybody. We want to make this campaign such that anybody that's affected, 100 million people in the 2 elections ago, 80 million people the last election did not vote. Eligible voters sat out. Why do you think they sat out? They sat out because they have nothing being given to them. Some are Republican or Republican leaning, some are Democrats, conservative, whatever they are. But there are tens upon tens of millions of people who are completely left out, disaffected, disillusioned by the system. We have a huge potential audience and voters and supporter base to go to. This is why we need the movement. And I welcome input and feedback. I've got a lot of DMs from people, a lot of comments. We're going to create the strategy around Dr. West's vision because he has the vision. But, ideas are welcome. This is collaborative. For leftists, this is a moment. For the Green Party, this is a moment. And I'm not going to let this moment be squandered if there's anything I can do about it. This is why I'm on your show right now. I saw a lot of this kerfuffle about me personally, because this is not about me. This is about Dr. West. And I thought, let me come address this stuff. I understand the criticisms. They're absolutely fair. People need to know me and see me. Let me look in your eyes and show you my commitment. Apologize for the mistakes I made, but let's start focusing on Dr. West. It's enough about me. I'm just a guy who does operations. We need to focus on the prize and on the candidate. And so thank you for going there with this right now.
Okay, so I have 2 more things, Peter. The first thing is there have been some concerns from people that there is a possibility, and I don't know for sure, but I'm asking you now, there's a possibility that Democrats are joining this campaign. And that also makes people worry, and they're concerned as well, because they feel like there could be some type of infiltration. And we've seen this happen in other political parties. I've seen it happen in organizing spaces as well. I'm not sure if you wanted to speak on that or not.
Absolutely, I do. Now, one of the things that we do need to remember, all of us came, a phrase I've heard, or maybe I made it up, I don't know. Nobody was born a Marxist, right? Everybody has a journey to get to where they got to. Mine has been very public, and along the way, I've done some stuff that I regret doing and has made people question. But my journey has been very, very, very direct. Further and further and further away. I became an independent in 2020, Sabby, and I was very vocal about why I did that, because I felt the Democratic Party was a party of irredeemable, unethical hypocrites. Just on Joe Biden alone, if you look at some of the stuff he's done in terms of eight allegations of sexual misconduct or harassment, including videos of him groping girls on camera, And suddenly the Me Too movement just disappears. Like, wait a minute, it was Me Too when a Republican did it. So that type of deep sort of cognitive dissonance made me leave the party and support the Green Party. And that's when I became friendly with not just Jill Stein, but with many Greens, because I felt that was where the ethics was, with the Green Party, right? So in terms of Democrat, I am not a Democrat. This idea that, you hear words like mercenary, infiltrator, op, and all these words. You could not be more transparent than I am. So speaking for myself, and as I told you, mercenaries and ops, they sniff out the money. I'd be working for the MIC. I'd be working for oil companies. That's where the big money is. Ops don't go to the Green Party. This is where ops don't go. Now, are there going to be Democrats on the campaign? I think there are supporters who voted for Obama who was droning weddings. A lot of, not a lot, some of my critics are people who supported Barack Obama. And we know what Barack Obama did just in terms of immigration, the deporter in chief. So everybody comes to this from a journey. From my perspective, the team that has been put around Dr. West, the beauty of Dr. West and his family is that they have a real, they can sniff out the BS artists and the people who are there for the movement. Right? The people that I have met on this campaign right now are some of the best people, talented people that I've ever worked with on campaigns before, dedicated to the cause, right? So this idea of infiltration, I see the problem of infiltration very differently, Sabby. I was warned early on, the attacks against Dr. West are not necessarily going to come from the right, and they're not necessarily going to come from the Democratic Party. They may come from places you don't expect them to come. And so that concerns me too. One of the reasons I'm here for solidarity and unity is what we don't want to happen is attacks on Dr. West from principled leftists. I'm not saying anybody's an op or anybody's planted or all that. I take criticism to heart. I believe you mean what you say and you have fair criticism. But we have to be very careful, because if the Democratic Party is going to infiltrate, what they're going to do is they're going to plant people on the left to go after Dr. West. And so that's the nefarious ways in which they work. So to me, it's not somebody's going to come to the campaign and convince Dr. West to become a different person. That's not how this stuff works. This stuff is shady. It's under the scenes. It's somebody who you think is your friend is now not your friend. It's somebody, the mainstream media, a reporter who's neutral. I had that experience today, suddenly pushing all these anti-West talking points to you and then pushing them in the mainstream media. It's going to be like a systemic way in which they try to stop him from every different direction. So I welcome if somebody worked for the Democratic Party and has become a dedicated Green. I'm one example of that, a dedicated independent. Great. If you're here for the cause and you really mean it from your heart, wonderful. So I don't really know how else to answer that. Like, I don't know if it's in reference to me or other possible people, but I promise you right now. Yeah.
Other possible people.
Yes, this is something we absolutely we have to be very, very, very mindful of the fact of the level. I don't know how to stress this enough. At the end of that conversation with this reporter, and I know I keep coming back to this because it was one of the most astounding interviews, and I've done interviews for 25 years. At the end of the interview, he said, "Are you worried that something's going to happen to you and Dr. West?" And it sounded more like a threat than it sounded like a question. And this is from a major mainstream reporter. And I sort of was taken aback. I said, "What? What are you asking me?" And the message really, my wife was actually quite disturbed by it. It's like, what kind of a question is that for a reporter to ask you? So I don't think I've yet even processed the level of the challenge that Dr. West is mounting to this establishment and the number of people who are going to say, no, we're not going to let you do this. No, I'm not talking about physical threats now. I'm talking about the different ways in which they will come at him to stop him. So, we're coming from a place of faith. And when I say faith and Christian faith, I want to reiterate, I respect all faiths. I respect agnostic, atheists, and people who follow any prophet or any. I happen to be raised Christian, so I don't want to ever speak about Christian faith. We have separation of church and state in this country, and I want to be very mindful of that. But I will speak of faith, and of course, Dr. West speaks about his faith as part of his moral code. So please let me put that out there as well in terms of what we mean by faith. But anyway, so yeah, it's a valid question. I mean, no doubt we're going to have to look at where are these threats coming from to block this insurgent movement.
All right. Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time. I know I think I told you 45 minutes, but I tend to go over for some reason. But thank you so much for your time again. Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. I know this is not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but people do have questions. And I think you answered a lot of those questions that people had. So thank you so much for doing that. And what can we look forward to in reference to Dr. West's campaign shortly, coming up soon?
Coming up soon, and I think there's going to be some climate focus in New York. There's a wonderful march that's going on, so you're going to see a lot of climate stuff going on. But you're going to see in the coming days and weeks, solidarity with strikers. You're going to see Dr. West out there. So we will let you know in advance. We'll put out press releases. We will let our friends know in the media, and we want to support independent media. Sabby, what you do and what independent and leftist media does is absolutely essential to getting the message out. So we will make sure everybody knows events that are coming up, stuff like that. So I don't want to give great detail because frankly I've only been here for 5 days at the campaign, and I'm just trying to pull the whole team together. But there will be great stuff to come. And Dr. West is such a figure. When he's out there, everybody hears him. He has that megaphone just naturally based on who he is and how he communicates. So thank you so much, Abby. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate the fair and hard questions, but I just spoke from my heart. So I hope that has answered some of the concerns.
Well said. Thank you so much, Peter.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, I know I have a lot of questions to go through. I know I got a lot of chats to go through, but hopefully we're going to do a mini call-in after the show tonight. And I really mean mini this time because I do have appointments first thing tomorrow. Mini call-in to get your perspective about this. I don't have it scheduled on call-in yet. I just decided spur of the moment to see how you guys feel as well. But I do appreciate Peter coming on to have the conversation. He didn't have to do that. So I do appreciate that. And hopefully some of your questions were answered there. So let's go to the super chats. Then we'll go to the thumbnail to cover the other stories. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the other news stories. Thank you, DC. Wow, I can't believe you're interviewing a real life Mossad agent. How exciting. Hashtag counterpro/Mossad 2024. You guys are brutal, man. Thank you, Sparky. Ask Peter if he's a pawn of the establishment. Thank you also, Sparky, for this one. Like Peter, Sirhan is a Lebanese Christian American. Oh boy, there's a lot of these. Thank you, Sparky, again. Ask Peter how many Palestinians did Peter kill? You guys are brutal, huh? Dr. Anahita West said in the Middle East during war, male children as young as 14 years old had to go to war. If you did not, you would go to jail. Thank you for that. Thank you, DC, again. Nice. Hashtag correct the record. Pack name drop, PD. Thank you, Sparky. How did Peter manage to destroy both Marianne Williamson and Cornel West campaign in the same year? You guys are brutal. Brutal. Thank you, Perfect Fluoro. How will the DNC smear a progressive Black man? They'll find a way. Thank you, Sparky. Jill Stein seems like she just fell off the turnip truck. No wonder Peter was able to fool her. I don't know what that means, the turnip truck. I think Jill Stein is very coherent, knows what's going on. Thank you, Colin. How can you say you become more progressive when Jill Stein and Bernie were running in 2016? You shamed Bernie voters back then. We discussed that. Thank you for the super sticker, Susan. Thank you, Vivian. I'm from North Carolina Green Party and so glad that Peter Daou is Cornell's campaign manager. Thank you, Sparky. Sounds like BS to me. Thank you, Fantomas. Pete, why you block so much of Twitter, fam? Ain't cool. I'm bootlegging all your 90s house remixes for the Discord. $1 a MP3. It's get back time. Okay. Thank you, Future Homestead. You need to earn our trust, Peter. We're watching your actions, not just your words. Thank you again, Sparky. Peter is a stone cold psychopath. Jeez. Thank you, Wired TARDIS. Could expand on your time with Lebanese militia when you were conscripted, your stance on the Sabra and Shatila massacre. I think we talked about that pretty in depth. And Dr. Anahita West says people should be allowed to evolve politically and culturally. This is what revolution is all about, changing the political landscape by influencing individuals towards progressive politics. Thank you for the super sticker, Staccato David. Thank you for the super sticker, Susan. Thank you, Sparky. Sparky, you're in here a lot tonight. Ask Peter if he was behind Marianne's Ukraine warmongering. I think we talked about that. That was not his idea. I think that's just Marianne, you guys, to be honest. Shout out to Susan for being a member for 10 months. I love that Peter is trying to put some fear into the system and glad that he's on our side. Thank you, DC. Peter Piper picked a puppet, panders to the public. Boy, oh boy. Thank you for the super sticker staccato. Thank you, Gabriel. PSYOPs to keep us busy away from 24/7 movement issues trending. Thank you, Michelle. Hashtag Cornell West 2024. Let's get to work. This badgering of Peter is nonsensical and time wasting. Thank you for the super sticker staccato. Thank you, Kiss a City. Would Peter go on to the Jimmy Dore show? I don't know. Maybe he would. Thank you, Joe. The Bernie betrayal made us all skeptics. Yes, and this is a point that I did raise with Peter, is that I think anyone coming in at this time in the game, it doesn't have to be like, you know, Dr. West campaign or anyone. I think people are just very skeptical because what has happened before, right? Because of how we've been treated by the Bernie peep. Thank you, the Black Pack. Peter's definition of imperialism is useless. If he were on the left, he'd know that it has turned into globalism with NATO at its enforcement arm. Russia and other sovereign states are resisting. Thank you, Sparky. Peter's an operator, all right, a confidence operator. Thanks, Anthony. Peter needs a real job. F him and the horse he rode on. He rode. Okay. Yikes, guys. Thank you, Michelle. Many of us pivoted. I was a Bernie delegate. You want to doubt me too? That's a good point too. And we can talk about that tonight on Call In too, you guys. I think that's something that a lot of us need to keep in mind. I mean, I voted for Bernie in 2020. I voted for Obama. I've told you guys that multiple times. Like, people do change. That's something to keep in mind. Thank you, Helpful Harm. Peter and Jill are using Dr. West to kneecap Claudia de la Cruz, probably paid by DNC still. Didn't Claudia just announce, first of all, I don't think that's true. And second of all, Dr. West announced his campaign before Claudia did. And Dr. West and Claudia are both speakers at the Peace in Ukraine rally October 3rd. So I think they're cool. Thank you, Peter. Can we know Peter's plan to get Dems to vote green? I wish I would have seen that one. Thank you for that. Thank you, Brolin. Good on you bringing in all voices that you can. Not sure how much I really trust Peter Daou. And you're right. Many of us are distrustful. Let's hope someone has a shot at breaking the duopoly. Thank you, Brolin. Thank you, Sparky. Peter thought Thachet could get over on, Peter thought that he could get over on Sabby, but he was sadly mistaken. Thank you, Sparky. Peter telling Sabby what he thinks she wants to hear. Sparky, you've been in here a lot tonight. Thank you, a kid. Please ask Daou if his commitment to third-party movement is so selfless he will remove himself from Cornell West campaign in order to not create conflict. I don't think that would happen. Again, we can talk about this on Call In. Thank you, Luca. I want to believe that you are sincere, Peter, but when you claim you never smeared anyone, you are not being honest. We remember who you were. Thank you, ABC. If what he's saying is true, why did he back Hillary 2 years after this, the biggest Zionist in American politics? It doesn't make any sense. Thank you, Sparky. Peter comes across like a narcissistic... You guys are brutal tonight. Narcissistic psychopath. Thank you, Matrix. I don't trust him. Thank you, Sparky. Takes talent to destroy 2 different campaigns from the inside in 1 year. Thank you, Colin. If you are serious, then interview with Jimmy Dore. Thank you, Jesse. If Cornell West ran against Hillary in 2016, Daou would have smeared him and drug him through the mud. Why trust Daou now? Thank you, Wired TARDIS. What is the top policy of the campaign? We talked about that. Thank you, Chris. Joined late. Please ask how Dr. West really great support for Palestinian rights squares with this guy's involvement in the IDF and the Falange militia, who are responsible for the Sabra and Shatila massacres. We talked about that in depth. And thank you, Sparky. Why did Dr. West give condescending Anderson Cooper a pass? Thank you, Chris. Peter blames Republicans for kicking Greens off the ballot. but Dems did it in North Carolina last year. Why focus only on Republicans if you're going after the duopoly? Thank you, Roger. Let's replace the word economy with income inequality, because even when the economy was good in the past 40 years, income inequality remained constant. That's a good point, Roger. I have to keep that in mind. Thank you, Matt. Why didn't he speak out when he was supporting other campaigns in the past? Now he has all the knowledge and great ideas. I feel like I'm being tricked. He spoke out of some of these things on Twitter. Thank you, Virgil. Ask about if campaign feedback from JD will, what? I read that wrong. Sorry. Ask about if campaign feedback from JD will be welcome since he volunteered to help. I think anyone can volunteer. All you do is click on the link and sign up. Thank you, Sparky. Even though Peter is a goon and Sparky, what is up tonight? Man, even though Peter's a goon and infiltrator, he is a newsmaker. So good work, Sabby, on getting the scoop and having him on your show. Thank you, Corey. In an hour interview, he only allowed you to ask 5 questions. I actually asked more than 5 questions, Corey, but thanks for counting. Thank you, Sparky. Irredeemable. Is Peter irredeemable? It's too soon for redemption. Thank you, Yonina. My only question is why Hillary Clinton hasn't, okay, we're going to be careful what we say on here, hasn't done this to you yet. What kill switch do you have, and why won't you help Julian Assange in his plight? Interesting. Thank you, Frank. People need to stop being cynical. We have a duopoly to fight. Cornel West 2024. Thanks, Sparky. Peter, are you on the Dr. West campaign to shepherd third-party voters to Democrats? He discussed that. Thank you, Laughed. Anybody believes Daou was a Hillary stand for anything other than career objectives is missing something. Says he could earn $1 million a year if he wasn't so noble. Evidently thinks we are all idiots here. Thank you, Stu. Off aside is his list of campaigns he's been a part of that have gone on to win election longer or shorter than the list of campaigns that have failed. Thank you, Alexis. Excellent interview, Sabby. I think Peter was genuine. I think he will be devoted to Cornell's campaign, but proof will be in his actions. Thank you, Sparky. Just fell off the turnip truck means naive or gullible. I don't think that Dr. Jill Stein is naive or gullible. I think that Dr. Jill Stein is very smart. Thank you. Perfect. Is Sparky actually Jimmy Dore, who has that much money? I don't think so. Sparky's been on here a couple times before. Thank you, Rome. Peter's past history with Hillary and the DNC will push away right-leaning independent voters from Dr. West. Thank you, Rome. That was a lot. Whew. You guys had a lot to say. Okay. Let's go ahead and give I'll come back to that, Eric. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate it. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, and of course, Sabbies. There's also members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys. And I have a giant space right here. I don't know what happened there. I'll have to fix that. And I believe I shouted out new Sabby patrons last night, didn't I? Yes, I shouted those out last night. Thank you guys so much. Oh man, we have some things to discuss tonight. Our next story, we're going to go to Vivek next. All right, let's go ahead and share that thumbnail and I'll tell you what else we're going to discuss tonight. All right, guys. Tonight we are discussing, of course, Peter Daou was just here. We're also going to discuss Vivek Ramaswamy decline. We'll also discuss Hunter Biden is indicted. If you have not heard, we're going to talk about the details of that story. And we're going to give an update about this UAW strike, which didn't turn out to be what I thought it was going to be. So we're going to get into all of that. So yeah, we'll get into all of it. Okay, let's get started with this first story here coming out about Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but a couple of days ago, or actually a week or two ago, I told you that Vivek Ramaswamy actually had surged in the polls right before that GOP primary debate. That is now the opposite. Vivek Ramaswamy is actually tanking in the polls. Now, what's interesting about this is I told you I thought that he won the GOP primary debate, in my opinion. But the donors said that, of course, they thought Ron DeSantis won because that's who most of the donors are backing. Recently, Vivek Ramaswamy decided to tell everyone about his economic policy, his 5-point plan. And one of the things that people have been very critical about is this plan that he has to lay off federal employees. I want to get started with the clip here from his interview on Fox Business, and then we're going to go into an article here to show you a little bit more about that plan and should you be concerned. Or is Vivek going anywhere in reference to this primary at all? Let's get into it.
All right, joining us now, tell us how he plans to destroy the swamp. A noble mission if there ever was one. Vivek Ramaswamy, 2024 GOP presidential candidate, co-founder of Strive Asset Management, author of Nation of Victims, Identity Politics, The Death of Merit, The Path Back to Excellence. Vivek, welcome back. You spoke to the America First Policy Institute today, if I'm not wrong, and you're outlining how to destroy the swamp. And I thought you'd share some of that vision with us because it's a noble cause if there ever was one.
Before he chimes in here, I just want to say something. I don't understand why you're running to be like Donald Trump. Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Remember, Donald Trump had that same rhetoric, we're going to destroy the swamp, although he basically gave like these billionaires and millionaires more tax breaks and things like that. We're going to destroy that swamp. So when Vivek, like when he first announced that he was running and he said that he thought Donald Trump was the best president of his generation and he did really great things. Again, I continue to ask the question, then why are you running? You have to be yourself. You have to have your own lane. But it seems like to me, he's just basically trying to be Donald Trump 2.0, right? So let's hear what he has to say about draining the swamp.
Thank you, Larry. I'm giving a sneak preview of the speech that I'll be delivering tomorrow morning at AFPI.
It's tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry.
Here's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's tomorrow morning, but we know it's a topic of passion for you, so I was looking forward to this conversation as well. The thing that the advisor class, the managerial class, has told presidents from Reagan to Trump is that you can't shut down agencies as the U.S. president. You cannot fire large numbers of federal employees, that you can't rescind federal regulations without asking Congress for permission. It turns out, Larry, if you read the law carefully, the U.S. president absolutely can. And that's what I'm going to lay out tomorrow, laying out a plan for reducing the size of the federal employee headcount by over 75%, 50% by the end of my first year in office. Also shutting down 5 government agencies. Those are the first 5 of many more to come, which we'll lay out in great painstaking detail. And also rescinding a majority of federal regulations, which I view as unconstitutional, pursuant to the standard laid out by the U.S. Supreme Court in West Virginia versus EPA last year. This will be a seismic shock to the system, Larry. Once again, restoring 3 branches of government as our founding fathers envisioned, shutting down the 4th branch of government, this unconstitutional shadow government in the administrative state. And I think.
So he's talking about like the CIA, the FBI, those shadow governments. That's what he's referring to.
I am the presidential candidate who's going to have offered probably the greatest level of detail on how to actually get that job done. And then we're going to get in there after the 2024 election and actually do it.
You know, Vivek, again, all noble causes. My pal Russ Vogt, OMB director, and Steve Miller, senior advisor, you know, they worked on Schedule F right at the end of the Trump administration, ran out of time. So I'm assuming you're going to go back there because the idea you can take out large numbers of civil servants, et cetera. You just can't take one out. I think that was the hang. We were going to try to take out large, you know, like the Department of Education, or at least carve it up and get rid of large chunk of it. So I know sneak preview. I happen to be the vice chair of the FPI, so you could sneak preview me.
Somebody please tell me, when I first listened to this, like, is he slurring his words, like the host? Because when I first watched this, I was like, is he a little tipsy or something? Or it kind of sounds like he's slurring his words a little bit.
Give me a little more detail. Put a little meat on the
That's
bones
good.
for me.
That's good. Yeah, and I like to go into detail on these issues because it matters. So the Schedule F exceptions, I think, were a great step in the right direction. What that means is there are certain categories that you all, I think, were working on to say that there's certain federal employees who are in policy-making roles that the U.S. president can fire. Well, expand that to say more employees fit that function, to say you could fire slightly more employees. And I think that's a step in the right direction. What I'm laying out tomorrow is a fundamentally different approach. Not going through the back door of Schedule F, but through the front door of reading the statutes, which say that you can't fire individual civil servants, but what they call in the law large reductions in force, mass layoffs, those aren't included in the civil service protections. And mass layoffs are absolutely what I'm bringing to Washington, D.C.
So what he's saying is, and he already gave that speech, by the way. I was going to play it on here, but honestly, it's kind of, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of boring. I'm just keeping it real. Like, he goes up to like a little easel and flips charts and turns pages. And I was like, they really not going to want to see that tonight. But the thing is, like, you can watch the full speech on YouTube if you look it up. But the thing is this basically what he's saying is he can actually do, as president of the United States, he can do mass layoffs. And he's considering doing that with those government agencies like the FBI, like the CIA. He also said the Department of Education is another one that he feels should not be there. What's really interesting, though, is this is where I start to see some type of mirror between him and RFK Jr., so to speak, because RFK Jr. wants to either reform or dismantle the CIA. I think he landed on dismantle the CIA, that kind of thing. And I feel like as a candidate, you really have to have your own lane. Like, what is unique about you? What are you running on? What is your key, initiative, your key thing? And I feel like Vivek is basically just a younger Donald Trump who wants to get rid of these government agencies. So it's like you have like this blur a little bit with RFK Jr. and then a little bit with Donald Trump. And it's just, I don't know. Like I said, he's declined significantly in the polls. I'll show you that in just a second, because I think that should be a warning sign to him, so to speak.
The other thing is there are unexpired provisions of the 1977 Presidential Reorganization Act that say under limited circumstances, if it's to stimulate the economy, if it's to promote efficiency in operations, if it's to reduce redundant agencies, then the U.S. president already has statutory authority to shut down and reorganize agencies. That's what I'm going to use for the FBI, for the ATF, for the U.S. Department of Education, for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and other agencies. And what we're going to do tomorrow, Larry, is go into detail. Say those 35,000 employees at the FBI, well, you know what? 20,000 of them are back office bureaucrats. They can go home and find honest work in the private sector. The 15,000 agents on the front line, we will reorganize them and move them to the U.S. Marshals or to the...
See, that's the part that I wanted you guys to hear, because when people say he wants to, dismantle the FBI, the employees that he's talking about removing are the ones that do more of the administrative labor, right? When it comes to the field agents, the ones that are actually on the ground, he still wants to keep that in place, but he wants to transfer them to the U.S. Marshals. So I want you to understand what he means. Like, he's not trying to completely get rid of these agencies. He still wants to keep that type of power in place, but he wants to make transitions there. So I think that's important for people to understand. But this guy, the host, is cracking me up. I can't.
Financial Crimes Enforcement Network at the U.S. Treasury, or for that matter, to the DEA on the front lines of the fentanyl epidemic across this country. That is how we at once increase effectiveness while also restoring the integrity of our constitutional republic. And by the way, stimulating our economy. Keep in mind, the administrative state is the fountainhead of that wet blanket of regulations that suppresses the U.S. economy. This is the top of my domestic policy priority agenda. And Larry, as you can hopefully tell, for me, these aren't just talking points. This is a vision of what we're actually going to get in there and do, not incrementally reform and tinker around the edges. We're going to get in there and shut it down. That's why I'm running for president. I think we're going to succeed.
All right. A noble cause.
I'm sorry, but the host is cracking me up. The host is just like, okay, can I take a nap now? Like, he is not with it. Now, I want to bring up this article here from AP because I want to show you a little bit more detail here. Vivek Ramaswamy proposes mass federal layoffs as more GOP hopefuls look to slash U.S. government. This is one of the, when I was talking about the easel, this is one of the sheets that he tore off, the myth that the president of the U.S. does not have powers to reorganize or shut down federal agencies. So I just wanted to show you that part really quick. But this piece here, it says Ramaswamy's proposals are among the broadest in the field. Speaking at the America First Policy Institute in Washington, he said he would try to reduce the federal employee headcount by half in his first year in office and by 75% his first term if he makes it to the White House. He wants to shut down 5 federal agencies: the FBI, the Department of Education. That includes those. He also said he would eliminate Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive, and the Food and Nutrition Service. The people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. So again, he's alluding to, the fact that the FBI is basically determining what's happening with the government. They're actually the ones that are telling them what to do. Attempting a purge of that size would immediately lead to a huge pushback from federal employees who have civil service protections, interest groups, and lawmakers of both parties who support the work of some of all of those agencies. While in office, Trump often railed against what he saw as a deep state of bureaucrats working against his administration priorities, but he did not carry out firings of rank and file employees. So that's important for people to know. Now, I will say this. When he announced this, I saw some rumblings on social media where people were saying, is he crazy? There's no way he's going to win. I don't think he's going to win anyway. But the reason why I think he feels bold about saying this, and he can do so without any type of fear, is because if you think about the Electoral College, he's not going to win the states that a lot of people that work in DC in those federal offices, deal with anyway. So think about it. If you're working in DC, you either live in DC or Maryland or Virginia. I got family in Maryland. I got family in Virginia. They all make that commute, right? He's not going to win those states anyway. The Republican candidate is not going to win Maryland. The Republican candidate, for the most part, is most likely not going to win Virginia. And we know DC stays blue. So that's probably why he's so bold about it. Now, I say that, but at the same time, Vivek Ramaswamy is tanking in the polls. Now, the 2024 National Republican primary, this is the shift from August 29th. Trump is at 55%. Of course, he's still on the top there. DeSantis at 16%. Look at the gap. What's significant is that gap between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. That's crazy. Nikki Haley is at 6%, and Vivek Ramaswamy is now down to 6%. Remember, before the GOP primaries, Vivek Ramaswamy, the highest, was already in the 20s. And I predicted that he would pass Ron DeSantis if he kept things up. But something happened. After that primary debate, he just started to decrease in the polls. And little by little, 1 week he was in the 20s, then he started going down to the teens, and now he's at 6%. And this is the YouGov America / The Economist poll. But it's like this pretty much across the board. So it's interesting. He has these plans. He's probably doing more interviews than any of the other GOP candidates so far from what I've seen. So he's getting a lot of press. But he's tanking in the polls. So I don't know. But it seems like Republican voters are not feeling him anymore. JB says Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign cannonball splash. He dropped off real quick, right? He was the hot ticket for a while, and then all of a sudden he just dropped off. He could increase again, but that was this significant drop. So I don't know. I don't think Republican voters are feeling him so much. Again, they're probably saying, well, he sounds like Trump, so they're probably just going to vote for Trump. I don't know. Let's go to some of the comments here, and then I'll go to Rockfin as well. Thank you, 007 Angelo. He sounds genuine, but I'm still burned from 2020. You're talking about Peter. Yeah, I know. That's the thing. And I think he understands that. That's the thing that I was trying to get Peter to understand, is that people just are not trusting like we used to be anymore, you know? Thank you for the super sticker, Ling Ling. Thank you, Historic Teachings. Daou is a DNC political hitman. Green Party is infiltrated. I won't vote green again until West, Daou, and Stein are gone. Wow, Historic Teachings. Thank you, John. Reagan fired a whole bunch of air traffic controllers. The things people remember. People remember. Thank you, Sparky. Saw a Vivek clip on your show where he and Buttigieg were fellow questioners on that town hall several elections ago. Vivek is an establishment plant. Yes. And I said this for a long time. I told you guys. I said this guy was selected. It was so obvious. Thank you, Joe Paradise. Kudlow is incoherent and likely incontinent. Yeah, that guy looked like he was pretty drunk. I'll take the comments on Rockfin, Eric. What a doozy that one was. Yikes. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin hemp. What does green even mean anymore? Geo and bioengineering. Is BBB going to be full of 5G and smart breakable spy tech everywhere? Thank you so much for that. Eric, if you have a chance, if you have time, you can put that link in the chat. And thank you, Roger. Kudlow doing drunken master style. Most people who work in government, be it local, state, or fed, not in the high executive positions, but in those lower level positions, are mostly Black people. Reason is because we find less racial discrimination in the public sector than we do in the private sector. That's true. In fact, most people in my family, even my extended family, have government jobs. PO being number one, doesn't surprise me since he made it very clear he has no love for Black people. He has like this obsession with Black people too. It's really weird. Thank you for this as well. Vivek saying this is him announcing he's going to skyrocket the unemployment rate under his administration. Why would anyone do this to their administration? I don't know, but like I said, his poll numbers are, he's tanking in the polls. So there's that. Okay, let's go to the next story. Last night, I was super pumped. I actually stayed up to midnight because I wanted to see if the United Auto Workers were going to walk out at midnight and go on strike. I saw it happen. I was excited and I tweeted about it, but apparently it was brought to my attention today that I was only half right, only a little bit right. We're going to get into this UAW issue. Now, Indie Left News was the one who told me about this, so he brought this to my attention. I said, I stand corrected. And I was excited too. Indie Left said, in case you missed it, UAW did not strike with all 150,000 members across the country last night. The leadership chickened out. They said the plants would shut down. No contract. Yet most workers are on the job today. So I was half wrong. Like I thought everybody walked out, the plants would shut down. That's what I thought, just what Indy said. But apparently they're doing a different style of strike, a strategic strike, something that I'm not used to. And I want to go ahead and get into that from paydayreport.com. It says let me make this bigger. By the way, some people are not happy about this, and I'll show you videos as well. UAW to only strike at 3 non-strategic plants to begin. So it's kind of like a slow rollout, like that kind of thing. Let me go here. It says instead of striking at strategic parts part markers that could force multiple plants to shut down. The UAW decided to strike at 3 plants that make some of the least popular cars in each of the big 3 chain. The plants include Toledo's Stellantis Jeep Wrangler Final Assembly Plant, Ford Michigan Assembly, which makes Broncos and Rangers, and GM's Wentzville, Missouri plant, which makes vans and second-tier trucks. With the union striking plants of little strategic significance to begin, it's unclear if the UAW will move to a strike at more strategic plants that make auto parts used by multiple plants. So, as you can imagine, some people are not happy about this. And one of those people is William Lehman. Now, William Lehman, he was running for president, I guess. He says, Will for UAW president org of the UAW. He made a video and he says, this is an absolute betrayal of the will of the membership. I'm going to get to his video in a second, but he wants you to hear the president, Shawn Fain, tell auto workers not to strike. So this is what happened prior to the walkout. Listen to this.
We're inventing a whole new way to strike, and we're calling it the stand-up strike. We will not strike all of our facilities at once. We will communicate with regional directors and local leadership who will walk their membership out if and only if they are called to do so. If your local is not named, then you are not yet on strike, but don't stop working unless you are explicitly called on to stop. We're inventing a whole new way to strike, and we're calling it the stand-up strike. We will not strike all of our facilities at once. We will communicate with regional directors and local leadership who will walk their membership out if and only if they are called to do so. If your local is not named, then you are not yet on strike, but don't stop working unless you are explicitly called on to stop.
And apparently most of them were working today. I mean, I understand it's a totally different strategy, but to me, wouldn't it be more effective if you shut everything down at once? Wouldn't that have been more effective? I feel like this is a betrayal to the union members, because let's keep it real here. I think if you shut all the plants down at once, you're probably going to get a faster response and they're probably going to cave to your demands. But I told you a couple of days ago that their Democrat politicians have been infiltrating these unions and they're having meetings with these union bosses and the presidents and things like that. Next thing you know, they're not going on strike anymore. They're doing this rollout mini strike. Similar thing with UPS. Remember, they were ready to go on strike. Next thing you know, Democrat politicians talk to the UPS. We'll just go ahead and take what's given to us. This has got to stop. We'll never get a general strike if we keep going like this, especially since I want you to hear what the CEO of General Motors had to say. You know, these are just greedy people. The CEO of General Motors just went on CNN and it went like this. This is why, you got to shut the shit down. We'll give her a minute here. Oh, it's Twitter. We have to refresh it. Whee! Sorry, guys. The Twitter videos do that sometimes. Okay, here we go.
Asking for a 40% wage increase over 4 years. They're asking for that in part because they say CEOs like yourself, leading the big 3, are making those kind of pay increases over the course of the last 4 years. You've seen a 34% pay increase in your salary. You make almost $30 million. Why should your workers not get the same type of pay increases that you're getting leading the company?
Well, if you look at compensation, my compensation, 92% of it is based on performance of the company. I think one of the strong aspects of the way our compensation for our represented employees is designed is not only are we putting a 20% increase on the table, we have profit sharing. So when the company does well, everyone does well. And for the last several years, that's resulted in record profit sharing for our represented employees. And I think you have to look at the whole compensation package, not only 20% increase in gross wage, but also the profit sharing aspect of it, world-class health care, and there's several other features. So We think we have a very competitive offer on the table, and that's why we want to get back there and get this done.
But if you're getting a 34% pay
Hold up. Let's go back first before we come back to her, because this part's kind of funny to me. Hold on.
Represented employees is designed is not only are we putting a 20% increase on the table, we have profit sharing. So when the company does well, everyone does well.
No, you do well. Let's be real. The CEOs always do well, right?
And for the last several years, that's resulted in record profit sharing for our represented employees. And I think you have to look at the whole compensation package, not only 20% increase in gross wage, but also the profit sharing aspect of it, world-class healthcare.
What the hell is guys, what is world-class healthcare? What does that even mean? People just say words and they don't even explain. What is world-class healthcare? Do they still have co-pays? I don't know. What does that even mean? Just something to make it sound like it's great. You don't even know what it is. Very strange. Very strange.
And there's several other features. So we think we have a very competitive offer on the table, and that's why we want to get back there and get this done.
But if you're getting a 34% pay increase over 4 years and you're offering 20% to employees right now, do you think that's fair?
Well, I think when you look at the overall structure and the fact that 92% is based on performance, and you look at what we've been doing of sharing in the profitability when the company does well, I think we've got a very compelling offer on the table, and that's the focus I have right now.
So, in other words, she didn't answer the question whether or not she thought that was fair. Obviously, it's not fair. Guys, this issue with UAW, some of you know what I'm about to say. You already know what's coming. This is just another example to show you why we need worker co-ops. This is another example to prove to you why you can't just stop at unionization. Unions are a great first step, but the end game should be worker cooperatives. Look at how they just screw you over. What is she talking about? 40% increase versus a 20% increase for the employees? With worker co-ops, everyone owns a piece of the company. These workers don't own anything. Nothing. And here's one of them complaining. So Will Lehman, he's been very vocal about this. It says mobilize the rank and file against the UAW sellouts. So he's saying they were sold out. Listen to him here.
By announcing Wednesday that the UAW will only call limited stand-up strikes at a few plants, even without a contract, UAW President Shawn Fain has made it clear that the UAW bureaucracy is selling out the rank and file again. We should understand what this is. Fain is not calling on workers to stand up. He is demanding that we lie down and accept what the companies want. He has gone from saying there would be a first ever strike at all 3 companies to a strike at only a few plants. The only outcome of this is that these workers will lose their pay and the companies will win, putting hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk through the transition to EV. The aim of this is to divide the membership and break our unity. A small number of workers will be striking, while the vast majority of workers will be used as scabs, producing vehicles and profits for the companies. If workers in the non-striking plants take any action to support their striking brothers, they could be victimized because Fain has let the contracts expire. The decision of the UAW bureaucracy is not legitimate. It violates the will of the rank and file, which voted by 97% to strike at all 3 companies. It was taken behind the backs of the rank and file membership at the behest of the corporations and the Biden administration. It was announced by a president elected through massive voter suppression with the support of only 3% of the rank and file membership. Most workers never even received a ballot to vote last year.
Did everybody hear that? This piece right here, I think we go back to 1 minute. Yeah.
Profits for the companies. If workers in the non-striking plants take any action to support their striking brothers, they could be victimized because Fain has let the contracts expire. The decision of the UAW bureaucracy is not legitimate. It violates the will of the rank and file, which voted by 97% to strike at all three companies.
Violating the will of rank and file, what does that remind you of? That reminds me of the railroad workers. When I interviewed the railroad workers, what did they say? We did vote to go on strike. So once again, the rank and file were looked over. This is why unions should not be the last step. This is why you have to have worker cooperatives. This is exactly why, guys, because the union presidents, they get into bed with the politicians in the Democratic Party. They start going to meetings with them, going to dinners with them, lunch with them. And the next thing you know, they sell out the workers. So the union president, the UAW, told them, no. You were scheduled to go to work unless you were told otherwise, when they could have shut down all three companies at the same time.
It was taken behind the backs of the rank and file membership at the behest of the corporations and the Biden administration. It was announced by a president elected through massive voter suppression.
Did you hear that? By the Biden administration. So I told you, this is what I was warning people about. The politicians had their hands in here somewhere.
With the support of only 3% of the rank and file membership. Most workers never even received a ballot to vote last year.
So that's that. Now I want to show you some of the conditions that they've been dealing with. Now this is in reference to Jeep. And this is from More Perfect Union. Thank you so much for this. One of the three massive plants that UAW is striking right now makes Jeeps. Let's get into part of this. I'm not going to be able to play the entire video, but I want you to hear what's happened to some of the employees.
The only time that I got off was I physically got sick, like exhausted, and went to the ER, and that was how I got a day off. They will literally work you until you fall.
I have to work 2 jobs, and that takes a lot of time from my kids. It takes a lot of time from my family.
Occasionally I will get shipped in on Sunday, so I will work 7 days in a row, which would be 70 hours.
I know a lot of people are like, oh, you guys are just crybabies. And it's like, no, we're not. We shouldn't have to work this hard, go through all these hoops just to make a living. Like, having a union job used to mean something.
That part right there. Jeep employs thousands of so-called temporary part-time or supplemental workers. So this was something, again, that I've seen. I told you guys this was happening in higher education as well. So they say they create all these new jobs, but that's why I keep asking, what are the positions? They don't tell you if these are part-time, full-time jobs, seasonal job. They don't tell you. They don't tell you. There's a lot of people that are working. Yeah, they're working, but they're contract or they're temp, which means the company is not giving you benefits.
I see full-timers, they can work 40 hours a week and they're good. I would like to work 40 hours a week and be able to take care of my family.
It just sucks. We're working full-time hours. Why am I still only a supplemental? Why am I still only a temp if I'm doing the exact same amount as a full-timer?
So full-timers, they make double what we make.
The girl working next to me is literally making $32 an hour, and I'm sitting a little over 17. Like, there's no difference in what we are doing. We are physically doing the same jobs.
As a supplemental, you start out at $15.78 an hour. After 4 years, you reach the maximum you can get, $19.28 an hour. You cannot get any more raises after that. When it comes to full-time, they start out at $17 an hour, and they cap out at $32 an hour. I'm currently capped out at $19.28 an hour.
Your full-timers that have the 401ks and the top out at 32 or 33 get their days off, their profit sharing, their health, dental, vision.
We don't get quality bonuses, we don't get sick pay, we don't get bereavement.
Like, we're not making what we should be making. And that's not me being a greedy millennial. That's the truth.
This is what people have to understand too. So thank you so much, Lee. I listened to a UAW worker that stated 26 years ago, making $13.66 an hour. And 26 years later, his pay has only increased by $3 an hour in 26 years. See, this is what a lot of these companies have done too, is that they've realized it's a lot cheaper just to hire temp and contract employees. Because when you have a full-time employee, you have to give them the full benefits. But if you hire a temp or a contract employee, they don't have to give them any type of benefits. So a lot of companies have been going along with this. This is a hot mess. This is terrible. But this is what happens in a capitalist society. That's how we got here. The CEOs are making tremendous amount of wealth. And the people at the bottom, how can you be capped out at $19 an hour? The CEO doesn't have a cap. Something to mention to people.
Being at the bottom, you kind of get what nobody wants to do.
So it starts to toll on you. And like you could be 25 feeling like you're 45.
When I was on the line, I ended up having a seizure. I was terrified. Honestly, I thought I was gonna die. I thought I was gonna die there at work. And I ended up having to have this brain surgery. After the surgery, I was out of work for a while. And as a SC, we don't get paid sick leave. So I had to basically come back as soon as possible because I had no money coming in. They were marking me absent even though I was in the ER, even though they know I left work in the ambulance. I was terrified that I was gonna lose my job and I'd have absolutely nothing to come back to.
I've missed funerals. I've missed birthdays. I'm gonna try not to curse, but it feels like trash.
And the thing I want to mention is obviously it's not just those that work at these plants, right? This happens let me tell you, I've seen it happen in higher education. I've seen it happen in healthcare. People have seen this happen in the tech industry. It happens all across the board. We have become a gig culture where companies know that they can just hire people for like these gig positions. They don't have to give them anything really. And if that's the only employer in town, where else are you going to work? So if you look at where some of these people live, where else are they supposed to work? That's what happens when they know they become the only game in town.
I didn't realize that coming into it. I didn't know that there was people there for 7, 8 years who aren't full-time yet.
It's something I've just been waiting for so long to happen that I've put so much off. Like I could have gone to other places and make more than I'm making now, but I've held on to the hope that I will roll over at some point because I love my job. I love making the Jeeps. I'm proud of the Jeeps. I want to be a part of the Jeep history, so it's something I want to stay a part of.
This time around.
I just want to pause here really quickly. And I want to say, this idea of go find another job, if this is the type of position that they have where they don't get paid days off, just remember when you apply for other jobs, you have to take off time to interview. So that's time that you're not going to be paid. If you've never had a gig job, I've had gig jobs. Trust me, I had a lot of weird jobs. I've had gig jobs and it's not fun when you need a day off for whatever reason, even if it's a doctor's appointment, it's not fun.
We're like, no, these are things we want and we don't want to back down.
I think that's a reasonable demand. The UAW is demanding temporary workers become full-time after 90 days. That makes sense because a lot of companies have a 90-day review. So I think that's reasonable. I don't have any issue with that. But this is crazy. This is what people are having to deal with. So I'll keep an eye on this story to see where it goes from here. But as it stands right now, people went to work today. So there's that. Let me go to comments in the chat. Thank you, Sparky. Vivek is an establishment contingency vying for Trump's VP in case Trump's elected. He'll be the establishment's new Mike Pence. Ooh. Thank you, Dirt Star Master. Sabby, we voting for Trump. I am not Dirt Star. I am not. Thank you, Stu D. At Dow, Metal Gear Solid Snake. Metal Gear Solid. I don't know what Metal Gear is. Thank you, Sparky. Vivek is a pro-war with China. That is true. People don't like that. There's that too. Thank you, Stu. It's like going into a bare knuckle fight with one hand tied behind your back and the other covered in a boxing glove. Thank you, M. Smith. This guy blinked first. They've already lost. Thank you, Sparky. Plenty of smart people are naive and gullible. Thank you, 007. That's not a strike. That's called a day off. OMFG. Yeah, this is wild, man. Zoya says UAW has an approximately 825 million strike fund. Jesus. And plans to pay workers on strike about $500 a week. Lack of funds isn't the issue. Thank you so much for saying that, Zoya, because some people were saying, well, maybe they don't have a big strike fund. $825 million for your strike fund is pretty good, bruh. Thank you, M. Smith. It's not about fairness. It's about what you can get away with. The upper class has never had any shame in this country. We've been here before. Thanks, Sparky. Sounds like the UAW co-invented the new way to strike with the globalist. A2Zemi, Ford already fired 600 people today. Jay says, but the NLRB though, right? Hey, but guys, that NLRB. Thank you, Wired TARDIS. At what point will violent revolution erupt? I think that's the question a lot of us have, right? Thank you, John. I'm willing to give Dow the benefit of the doubt. He seems to be direct, remorseful, and sincere, and Stein and West are vouching for him. Thank you, John. Well, folks, we're getting to our last story. Yes, our last story. If you have not heard, Hunter Biden has now been indicted on gun charges. Now, before we get into the video clip, one thing I do want to remind you is this is not the best that they can do. I really believe that this is just a distraction away from Hunter Biden's laptop and his business dealings in Ukraine. This was something I predicted. I didn't know for sure it would be the gun charge, but that they would try to get him on something else to draw your attention away from the Ukraine business dealings in Burisma. So here we are. It is now happening. President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has been indicted by special counsel David Weiss in connection with a gun he purchased in 2018. The first time in U.S. history, the Justice Department has charged the child of a sitting president. Let's dive in.
Hunter Biden has now been indicted on gun charges. This, of course, following the breakdown in what had been a deal between prosecutors and Hunter Biden and his lawyers, a plea deal. He will now be charged on the gun charge. Our Kara Scannell has been following this. Kara, what do we know? What's in the indictment specifically?
Well, Jim, this indictment just hit the docket. It's 4 pages long, and it's 3 criminal counts. So what prosecutors are alleging here is that Hunter Biden had filled out the form when he bought the firearm falsely. That is because the form asked the question of, are you a user of drugs at the time that you're purchasing this firearm? Hunter Biden had checked the box that said no, but he has since become very public about his abuse of cocaine. So he's charged with 2 counts of making false statements on these forms and 1 count of possessing the gun while he was addicted and a user of a controlled substance, again, crack cocaine. So
again, this is a distraction, guys. Okay, let's get him on the gun charge. He lied on his gun form. Okay. This is what they're trying to get him on. There's more serious things that they've done. When we talk about the business dealings in Ukraine and we talk about the funding that's come from the U.S. government, the billions of dollars that have been sent to Ukraine, we talk about the escalation between Ukraine and Russia from NATO. Come on, guys. Come on. We got to really go all the way there. This is just to shut people up. Let's get them with the gun charge. Show people that he could possibly get 20 years. Let's get him with that so people can say, okay, Hunter Biden has been held accountable, and they'll stop talking about the laptop. They'll stop talking about the business dealings in Ukraine, which means they'll stop talking about the possibility of Joe Biden being knowledgeable about those business dealings, even when he said he was not. That's what this is about.
3-count indictment of felony charges. These are serious charges. Now, Jim, as you mentioned, he did have a deal that would have allowed him to avoid prosecution on a gun possession charge. That collapsed under scrutiny by a federal judge. Now, Hunter Biden's lawyers have argued that this agreement they struck was binding and that the prosecutors could not bring other charges. So clearly something that they're appearing like they're going to fight in this case. I've reached out to Hunter Biden's criminal attorney. I've not heard back since this indictment has hit the docket, but certainly very serious charges. This possession charge carries a statutory maximum of 10 years in prison, though that is rarely what a defendant is sentenced to, because often these charges do accompany another crime, and that is not what we're seeing in this case. But prosecutors did say that they were going to bring this charge by the end of the month. Now, this time is now. We do not know yet when Hunter Biden will have to appear in court for an arraignment on these charges. That's just not available yet in the docket. But, you know, it is also important to note that prosecutors are investigating him for tax charges. He did have a plea to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges. That also fell apart. Those charges were dismissed. And that is something that the special counsel, David Weiss, is still continuing to investigate. So this is not the end of the road for Hunter Biden as far as potential criminal charges facing, but he is facing 3 criminal counts today, Jim. Pretty serious charges.
Let me say something about the tax charge. It's easy to go after people with the taxes. When they're trying to get someone on, we need to get them on something. There's too much attention going into this whole issue with Ukraine. You know, then there was the interview that his former business partner had with Tucker Carlson, that Joe Biden was definitely present during some of those business meetings. Like, all of this stuff has escalated, right? So taxes is one of the easiest things you can come after wealthy people for, because a lot of them usually have accountants, their own accountants. They don't do their own taxes. And so they're just like, whatever, you know, hide some money here, hide some money there. Some of them have offshore accounts. They have certain ways they try to get around the system. So one of the easiest things to go after is, let's go after them for taxes, to make it seem like it really means something. But this is nothing. This is nothing compared to the laptop. And we cannot move away from that. We cannot forget about the laptop, okay? Just like they didn't want you to forget about Hillary's emails, we can't forget about this laptop.
That's right. And these related to the gun charge, they do not affect the continuing investigation, as you note, into the tax-related charges. Kara Scannell, thanks so much. We should note that this is the first time in U.S. history that the Justice Department has filed charges against the son or daughter of a sitting president. Our
first time for everything.
Evan Perez here now. This is significant. Before we even go to trial, before we even get to a point where, if he's convicted, there would be sentencing involved. But tell us how we arrived here, because until a few weeks ago, the thinking was they had reached a deal.
Right, they had reached a deal, Jim, and it was at least the judge's discomfort with what she thought was the odd nature of that agreement, which basically called for her to play no role. She just really had to rubber stamp it, is what she viewed it. She was being asked to rubber stamp an agreement between prosecutors, between David Weiss, the Trump appointee U.S. attorney who is still in office and who is overseeing this investigation, and is now a special counsel. The deal was that if Hunter Biden abided by a certain amount of terms that were going to be laid out, that he would have this charge essentially go away eventually. And that's where the judge drew the line and started asking questions, and where, frankly, this all began unraveling. But really, the other thing that I think is worth noting here is that Hunter Biden himself caused a lot of the problem for, obviously, the fact that he was addicted to drugs, and he bought this firearm. He possessed it for about 11 days, I believe, according to the information, according to the prosecution. But what made this certainly more easy for prosecutors to bring was that Hunter Biden wrote a book. He discussed his own struggles with drug issues, and
this guy, I'm sorry, forget the book, okay? Forget the book making it easy. What actually made it easier to bring was because he recorded himself doing drugs. He recorded those videos, and it's on that laptop. And those videos have been leaked onto social media. Let's keep it real. What's this guy's name? Evan? Let's keep it real, Evan. Yeah, there's a book, but let's be honest. There's video evidence. Video evidence of him doing drugs. Just say it.
He talked about it at about the time when he possessed this firearm, and that really what it did is it drew the attention of investigators at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, who already were kind of looking into some of these issues, and really cemented the idea that he should not have been able to buy this firearm, or at least when he bought it, Jim, that he did not truthfully fill out that form, which everybody fills out when they buy firearms. Now, look.
Guys, people do this shit all the time. I just want you to understand how they're trying to make this a bigger deal than it actually is. Yes, you should tell the truth on the form. But the thing is, people do this all the fucking time, okay? People buy weapons at yard sales. People, look, I lived in the South. I'll tell you. I lived in the South, so I've seen some things. I've seen some things. People lie on those forms. People have illegal weapons. People will buy them from the gun shows where they don't check all of, the fact they don't check all of your information to see that you should be able to purchase that weapon. People have to understand, like, this stuff happens all the time. This is not, and they're just like, he lied on a form. People do this all the time. It's just, oh my God.
You and I've talked about this before, right? This is one of those things that cases like this don't often get brought, and I think Hunter Biden's attorneys are going to make a big case of this because usually there's other things that are attached to this. There's usually other criminal conduct that is attached to it related to the gun, and so it's unusual for this to be brought as a single charge without anything else, perhaps violence or anything else. So we'll see. This will be litigated, obviously, by Hunter Biden's attorneys. They're going to point out that he's being singled out. They're going to claim that it's for political reasons because of all the criticism from Republicans on Capitol Hill.
So they're going to claim it's for political reasons. Yeah, there's political reasons. But also, I mean, the laptop, okay? The laptop. Now, Politico talked about this as well. Hunter Biden indicted on gun charges. A Delaware grand jury charged the president's son with illegally owning a gun as a drug user. They trying to make it seem like, think about how they're painting Hunter Biden. They're trying to make him sound like the victim. They're trying to make him sound like a victim, not someone who's at fault. That's why they don't want to go further into the Ukraine stuff, also because some of those things will implicate Joe Biden as well. They don't want to go as far into that because they want the public to see him as a victim. On Thursday, a Delaware grand jury indicted Hunter Biden on 3 related charges, including illegally owning a firearm as a drug user and lying on a form when he allegedly bought the gun. The lying on the form part is what does it for me. It's just like, oh, no, Lana, you're not supposed to let him get away with the crime. But what I'm trying to tell you is the crime that they're charging him with is minimum compared to what he should be charged with. This is just to focus you on the gun charges instead of focusing on the laptop and his business dealings in Ukraine, which is actually even more important. That's the thing. And I want to mention this point right here. Did I go to it? Oh, hold on. See, they even do it like the charges could tee up a fight over the Second Amendment. His lawyers previously told prosecutors that if he faced the charges leveled today, they would argue that the law banning drug users from possessing guns is unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. Well, honey, listen, a lot of people that have been convicted would like to have a word. Okay? Just saying. Chief Justice Roberts' conservative Supreme Court majority has dramatically expanded Second Amendment rights in recent years, which Biden's legal team cited in communications with the Justice Department that Politico reviewed. Numerous other criminal defendants facing similar charges have made the same argument with mixed results. The Supreme Court announced this year that it will hear a case on a similar legal issue, whether or not people under domestic violence restraining orders can be prohibited from possessing guns. And then I want to go to this piece here. I know that there are some right-wing pro-Second Amendment zealots who would say that he shouldn't be charged with these gun crimes because there should be no gun laws at all. But my party certainly disagrees with that. The NRA, meanwhile, released a brief statement on charges. Laws should be applied equally against all criminals. That's from the NRA spokesperson, Billy McLaughlin, said in a response to a request for comment. So we can't allow ourselves to just be distracted because we have to keep in mind what the real game changer is here, and that is the Ukraine business dealings, not the fact that Hunter Biden lied on the form. What's next? We're going to go after Hunter Biden because it turns out he used a fake ID. You know how many people I knew growing up had a fake ID? It's that kind of thing. Get him on the real shit. That's how I feel. Get him on the real stuff. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll come back. We're going to do call in. It's going to be a quick call in. So come quick with your questions. Oh, let me get this really quick because I don't want to miss this one. Thank you, Lee, for the super chat. I agree with worker co-ops. The plantation owner / plantation worker model doesn't work for the benefit of wage earners. Over $13,000 an hour CEO versus $19 an hour worker. Thank you so much for that, Lee. Eric, if you want to grab the other ones that are here, I'm going to take a quick break and I'll do call-in.
Sure. Have you made the room yet? The call-in room?
Nope. Got to do that now.
Okay. You have to make it. You go do that. All right. How's everybody doing on a Friday night? So, yeah, kind of a mellow show tonight, right? No, that was good stuff. Yeah, I thought the interview was with Peter Daou was really interesting. We're going to be, so this is where we give Sabrina a little break, and then we'll go into call-in. We'll have a link if you want to do call-in on your browser, or you can do call-in on on your smartphone. We've been waiting for call-in to die, basically, because who is it? Rumble bought it, and they say they're moving the functionality over to locals, but call-in seems to still be limping along. So we'll keep using it till it dies, or we find something better. All right, so let's see. Oh, one thing I want to say about the Hunter Biden thing and whatnot is it is like this whole thing of they're trying to find. They always have to find things with these charges and whatnot that don't apply to like everyone in Congress and the president and everyone else. And so when they're charging Trump or when they're charging Hunter Biden or something, it's this whole game. Like they can't charge them with the real stuff, with the real corruption and so forth, because then you'd have to start charging all of Congress. And we can't have that. So let's see. Yeah, we got some super chats built up. Let's see what we got in here. Thanks for this super chat, Baza. Love all these strikes. Don't upset the bosses. Yep. I mean, with the whole UAW and the strike thing. I mean, I'd be more into it and feeling like it was a thing if they had a plan for escalating, if they had like a calendar and they said, okay, right now we're doing this few of these strikes, and then tomorrow we're going to do 10 more plants, and tomorrow 10 more plants, and they escalate it and have some, at least it would seem like you have a real plan. And this just seems like striking without striking. We'll see where it goes. Thanks for the super chat, Sparky. UAW members back in the 80s or even 70s made more than these folks despite much more production per worker nowadays. Yeah, definitely the worker pay, that kind of standard of living has definitely gone down. Thanks for this one, Sparky. Yep, Hunter's gun charge is a limited hangout. And just gotta hit the right button here. Thanks for this one, DC. Criminalizing gun ownership is unconstitutional. And then DC, thanks for this one too. But to be fair, the Constitution is a work of fiction. Thanks for those, DC and others. Yeah, I mean, I think with the Constitution, I mean, there's good stuff in there that I think we need to kind of make real. All right, so yeah, we had the big interview with Peter Daou today. I think he, answered questions. I think he seemed to be ready to answer any question, and I thought he gave good answers, and we'll see where it goes. The proof will be in the pudding too over the coming days and weeks. One thing that that I'd like to really see out of the West campaign and the whole thing in general is the idea of making it a real movement, and I feel like the way to do that is concentrating on the key things. And I'm gonna give you my opinion of what I see the key things as here we go. I like to call it an MCDS, and money, corruption, demand, solutions. And it's this idea of having a focus on the money and the corruption, and having a clear set of demands. And then the things flow into one another. Like if you recognize that the whole system runs on big money, then that's your first step into how things really work. If you really want to understand how things work, if you and then from there, that's definitionally corruption. That's how, it's, so I feel like what I'd like to see personally, if they're asking me, is I would like to see at the top of their platform, on that website and on their platform, on their talking points, corruption. We have to end the corruption because everything else flows from it. And, from there you get into demands. It's about demanding an end to the corruption. It's about being clear on that. And then you have the rest of the other set of demands, you end up with a list where you start with the corruption and then you get into the rest of it, the healthcare, the wars, the empire, the standard of living, and all that stuff. And I feel like if we could be focusing on that more and less on personalities and on who's doing what and whatnot, and it would be a guiding, I don't know what you'd call it, but a central guiding light of a movement. And I feel like it could be a real winner as a movement as far as drawing people in. And then another key part of it is the solutions, in that you end up with your demands, but then you need to have a way of fixing it. You need to be able to say, well, what do we do about it? And so if it's something like the money, and for the solution, well, you got to deal with the money. That means passing laws for clean elections. That means public financing of campaigns. And the thing you run into when you start trying to do these things, and we even saw this in Massachusetts this cycle, there was a proposed ballot measure for regulating campaign spending in elections in Massachusetts. And then that was reviewed by the Attorney General office, and they wouldn't allow it to go forward. And one of the big reasons they said it can't go forward is because the Supreme Court has said money is speech. And so if you do a law regulating campaign money, then they equate that to speech, and they say, no, you can't have that law. It's unconstitutional according to the current Supreme Court. And the reason I bring all that up is that a key point in the solutions is enacting a constitutional amendment that fixes that. And it's more than just overturning Citizens United. It's about saying specifically that corporations are not people and money is not speech. And so I feel like you need to have a real list of this kind of demands. You need to be clear. You need to have big money and corruption at the top. And then, you also want to have on then a clear list of things and bullet points and just out there. So you have healthcare for all, the minimum standard of living, you have end the wars, you have reject censorship, you had racial and criminal justice reform, the climate emergency, immigration reform, an election system we can trust, revamp taxation, democratize the enterprise. I made it 11. It's catchy. Let me catch this super chat. Saw it come through. Thanks for the super chat. 007 Angelo. USA corporations to the workers, let them eat cake. Those same words didn't work very well in France. Sharpen the guillotines, revolution time. Thanks for that super chat. 007 Angelo. And so part of the power of having the 11 demands, having the full list, is that I think this would capture a lot of people's, a lot of what they're looking for, what they need, what you're going to do for them. All right, I've done my spiel. Let me clear this. Oh, yeah, we got to get the calling room up.
All right,
I'll get the calling room display.
All right, cool. So I pinned the link to call in the chat. It's pinned at the top of the chat. Come on over and discuss. It's episode 125 and Peter Daou interview recap.
Yeah. Bring it up. All right, we'll see you in there.
I didn't put like a big description. I just said, let's chat. So that's pinned to the top of the chat. So let's go on over to call in, guys. I'm sure you have some things you want to say, some questions. It will not be a long call in, but because I do have appointment in the morning, but yeah, let's go chat. All right, guys, that is it for me tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. Other than that, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.